The wind outside is a primal scream, a relentless force clawing at the jagged peaks of the Altai Mountains in this year of 1200. It carries the jagged edge of the Siberian taiga and the scent of permafrost, threatening to swallow anything that dares to stand tall. But as you step through the heavy, iron-reinforced larch door of the stable, the world abruptly changes. The roar of the mountain is instantly silenced, replaced by a profound, cathedral-like stillness. Inside, the air is thick, golden, and sweet, a heady mixture of dried mountain grasses, the earthy musk of a healthy animal, and the faint, resinous perfume of cedar wood warming near a small stone hearth. You have entered a sanctuary where time does not just slow down, it ceases to exist. In the dim, amber light, filtered through narrow slits in the thick log walls, you see him, the mountain pony. He is a sturdy, thick-boned creature of the high altitudes, his body designed by centuries of survival in the harshest terrain known to man. His winter coat is a dense, wild forest of dun-colored fur, so thick that it seems to ripple like the surface of a shadowed lake. He stands quietly, his head lowered, the steam from his breath rising in rhythmic, ghostly plumes that vanish into the rafters. This is the breath of the Altai, the steady, pulsing heartbeat of the mountains. You are not merely a rider here, you are a guardian, a companion in a world that demands absolute trust between man and beast. As you reach out to touch his neck, your fingers sink deep into the warmth of his winter coat. Beneath the coarse, weather-beaten outer layer lies a furnace of life, a radiating heat that defies the freezing world outside. There is a deep, vibrating hum in the air, the sound of a creature at peace. He shifts his weight, the dull thud of his hoof against the packed earth sounding like a distant drum, signaling that he knows you're there. He is waiting for the ritual to begin. You pick up the grooming brush. It is a simple tool carved from a single piece of polished birch, its bristles stiff and weathered. It feels heavy and honest in your hand. This is not a task of vanity. It is a physical dialogue, a silent conversation held in the language of touch and sound. You place the brush against the ridge of his shoulder and begin the first long, deliberate stroke. The sound is mesmerizing, a dry, rhythmic rasp that cuts through the silence. As the bristles move through the thick fur, a fine mist of dust and dander rises into a stray beam of sunlight, dancing like golden microscopic stars. The pony's ear twitches toward you, and he lets out a long, low sigh that vibrates through the very floorboards beneath your feet. He leans his massive weight into the brush, a gesture of total surrender and profound connection. In this moment, the wars of the great Khans, the shifting borders of empires, and the struggles of the trail are all forgotten. There is only the texture of the hair, the heat of his skin, and the hypnotic hush-hush of the brush as you move down the line of his spine. The air in the stable feels timeless. You can smell the sun-dried clover tucked into the rafters and the faint, salty scent of the pony's sweat. Every movement is a meditation. As you work, your own breathing begins to synchronize with his. His inhales are deep and slow. Yours follow. The frantic energy of the day dissolves into the shadows of the stable corners. You are no longer a traveler in a hurry. You are a part of the mountain itself, anchored by the weight of this animal and the ancient tradition of the groom. The world outside may be a chaotic swirl of ice and wind, but here, within these walls of moss-choked logs, you have found the center of the universe. The brush moves again, a steady, unwavering rhythm that promises safety, warmth, and an unbreakable bond that has endured for 1,000 years. The rhythm of the brush becomes a heartbeat of its own. As you move from the pony's shoulder toward the broad expanse of his flank, you notice the intricate mapping of his life written in the texture of his coat. There are small, faded scars beneath the fur, reminders of narrow mountain passes where the shale bit back, or perhaps a brush with a thorn thicket in the valleys below. With each stroke, you are smoothing away the remnants of the trail, clearing the dust of 100 miles. The sound is a constant, soothing friction. Hush, hush, hush. It is a frequency that seems to vibrate in your very marrow, grounding you to the earth. The horse closes his eyes halfway, his heavy lids fringed with long, dark lashes that catch the golden dust. He is falling into a trance. and you are falling with him. The stable itself seems to breathe with you. The heavy timber beams groan slightly as they settle under the weight of the mountain snow accumulating on the roof. These sounds, the creak of wood, the rustle of straw, the distant whistle of the wind through the eaves, form a symphony of isolation. In the year 1200, there is no electricity, no hum of machines, no digital distractions. There is only the physical reality of the present. You feel the grit of the mountain soil on your own skin, the slight ache in your forearms from the repetitive motion, and the overwhelming sense of peace that comes from serving a creature that asks for nothing but care. You move your hand to his neck, where the mane falls in thick, tangled locks. It is a wild thing, this mane, filled with bits of dried burrs and the memory of the wind. You set the brush aside for a moment and use your fingers to untangle the knots. The hair is coarse and strong like the fibers of a ship's rope. As you work through a particularly stubborn snag, the pony turns his head slightly, his velvet nose bumping against your shoulder. It is a gentle nudge, a soft thank you in the dialect of horses. His breath is warm against your tunic, smelling of fermented grass and life. It is a startlingly intimate moment, a bridge between two species built entirely on the foundation of mutual survival and quiet affection. The light in the stable is shifting now, the amber glow deepening into a rich burnt orange as the sun dips behind the high Altai peaks. The shadows in the corners grow longer, reaching out like dark fingers toward the center of the stall, yet the warmth remains. It is trapped within the thick cedar logs and the bodies of the animals. You pick up the brush again, moving to the other side of the pony. The transition is seamless. He knows the routine. He shifts his weight with a soft grunt, presenting his untouched side to you. As you begin again, you think of the generations of riders who have stood exactly where you are standing. Warriors, shepherds, messengers, all of them have felt this same coarse fur, heard this same rhythmic brushing, and sought the same refuge from the elements. In this stable, you are linked to a lineage of humanity that understood the value of silence. You are brushing not just a horse, but a legacy. The dust you kick up is the same dust that settled on the saddles of the ancient nomads. The hush of your brush is an echo of 1,000 years ago. You focus on the area behind his ears, a sensitive spot where the sweat from the bridle often itches. You use a softer touch here, the bristles barely skimming the skin. The pony's lower lip begins to droop, a sign of total relaxation. He is no longer the fierce, tireless mountain climber that can gallop through snowdrifts. He is a soft, vulnerable soul finding comfort in your hands. This vulnerability is a gift. In a world as harsh as the Altai in winter, trust is the most valuable currency, and right now this horse is giving you everything he has. The air remains still, though you can feel the temperature outside dropping rapidly as twilight takes hold. The contrast makes the interior of the stable feel even more like a miracle. It is a bubble of warmth in a frozen universe. Every stroke of the brush reinforces that safety. You find yourself slowing down even more, unwilling to reach the end of this task. Each pass of the birch-handled brush is a deliberate act of presence. You notice the way the light glints off the pony's dark eye, reflecting the flickering orange of the distant hearth. You notice the way the steam from his nostrils curls around your wrists. You are no longer just cleaning an animal, you are participating in the very essence of being alive. The world outside has slowed to a standstill, and in this golden, dusty silence, you have found a clarity that no words could ever capture. The hush-hush continues, a steady melodic promise that as long as this rhythm lasts, all is well. The brush continues its journey, moving now toward the pony's hindquarters where the muscles are dense and powerful, shaped by a lifetime of leaping over icy rivulets and digging into the loose scree of steep mountain faces. Here the fur is even thicker, a chaotic tapestry of protection. You lean your weight into the stroke, feeling the solid mountain-like resistance of his body. The sound deepens. The hush becomes a more resonant thrum as the bristles work through the deep layers of the coat. It is a satisfying sound, a productive sound. It speaks of the removal of the day's burdens, the literal shedding of the dried mud from the lowlands and the salt of exertion. You can feel the horse's appreciation in the way he remains perfectly still, a furry monolith in the deepening twilight. The scent of the stable has evolved as you work. The initial hit of dry hay and horse musk has mellowed, mixing now with the smell of old wood being warmed by the proximity of living bodies. There is a faint hint of wood smoke drifting in from the rider's quarters, a thin blue ribbon of scent that speaks of a soup pot bubbling and a bed of furs waiting. But that is for later. For now your world is the width of this stall and the length of this horse. You watch as the dust motes settle on your own sleeves, turning your dark tunic into a landscape of grey and gold. You are becoming one with the environment, a part of the stable's ecosystem. As you reach the croup, the very top of the hindquarters, the pony lets out a long, shuddering breath that ends in a soft whinny, a sound of deep internal release. It's as if he is letting go of the tension of the high passes, the fear of the wolf's howl, and the biting cold of the ridge lines. You pause for a moment, resting your forearm against his back. You can feel the heat radiating through his skin, a steady volcanic warmth that defies the encroaching Siberian night. In the silence, you realize that you aren't just grooming him, he is grounding you. The frantic thoughts of the journey, the worries about the coming winter, the supplies, the distance to the next camp have all evaporated. They cannot survive in this atmosphere of rhythmic friction and heavy breathing. You move to the tail, a thick, coarse brush of obsidian hair that reaches nearly to the ground. You don't use the brush here. Instead, you use your hands, carefully shaking out the tangles and the bits of dried grass caught in the strands. The hair is cold at the ends but warm near the dock. It feels like raw silk, unrefined and strong. The pony swishes his tail gently, a slow, pendulous movement that brushes against your legs. It is a peaceful interaction, devoid of urgency. You find yourself noticing the small details you usually overlook, the way the light catches the silver hairs in his coat, the sound of a mouse scurrying in the hayloft above, the rhythmic clink of a loose chain somewhere in the shadows. Every movement you make is slow and deliberate. In the Altai of 1200, haste is a danger. To rush is to slip on ice. To rush is to miss the subtle sign of a horse's lameness. So you embrace the slowness. You find a strange hypnotic joy in the repetition. The brush goes down, the brush comes up. The dust rises, the dust falls. You are carving out a moment of absolute safety in a world that is often indifferent to the survival of the small. The thick logs of the stable walls seem to pulse with a slow wooden heart, echoing the pony's own heartbeat. You are inside the womb of the mountain, protected, cherished, and silent. The pony turns his head again, his large, liquid eye reflecting your own silhouette. There is an ancient intelligence in that gaze, a recognition that spans the ages. He is not a tool, he is a partner. He knows the weight of your body in the saddle, and you know the strength of his legs in the storm. This grooming is a renewal of that contract. It is a promise that you will care for his flesh as he cares for your life. As the brush finds a particularly itchy spot near his hip, his upper lip curls back in a flamen response, tasting the air, his body leaning dangerously far into your space. You laugh softly, the sound barely a ripple in the heavy air. It is a moment of pure, cross-species companionship, a shared secret between a man and a horse in a world that has finally mercifully slowed to a standstill. The grooming continues, shifting now toward the lower legs, those sturdy pillars of bone and sinew that have navigated the treacherous scree slopes of the Altai. You kneel in the soft, dry straw, putting yourself at the level of the pony's knees. Here the air is cooler, carrying the scent of the earth and the dampness of the mountain floor that clings to the hooves. You take a smaller, stiffer brush to clear away the dried mud that has caked around the fetlocks. Each stroke releases the smell of the trail, a mixture of mineral-rich clay and crushed alpine herbs. The horse remains remarkably still, trusting you even as you work near his sensitive legs. He lifts one hoof slightly, almost offering it to you, a gesture of profound cooperation that only comes from years of shared hardship and narrow escapes. As you work, you notice the flickering shadows cast by the small oil lamp hanging from a nearby post. The flame dances in the slight draft, causing the silhouettes of the wooden beams to stretch and shrink across the pony's coat. It creates an illusion of movement, as if the horse and the stable are breathing together in a slow architectural lung. The hush of the brush against the lower leg is sharper here, a crisper sound against the shorter, denser hair. You feel the pulse of the animal through your fingertips as you steady his leg, a slow, powerful throb that reminds you of the sheer physical engine required to survive at this altitude. This pony is a marvel of biology, a creature that can find calories in frozen scrub and warmth in the heart of a blizzard. You move to the chest, the broad, muscular front of the horse that breaks the wind as you ride. The fur here is swirled in cowlicks, a chaotic pattern of growth that requires you to change the direction of your brushstrokes frequently. It is like navigating a map of the wind. The pony bows his head, his muzzle almost touching your hair. You can feel the moisture of his breath, the gentle huffing that speaks of deep relaxation. There is no hierarchy in this moment. You are not the master and he is not the servant. You are two living souls sharing a pocket of warmth in a vast freezing wilderness. The rhythmic hush-hush becomes a lullaby, a repetitive mantra that clears your mind of everything but the sensation of hair and wood and heat. The silence of the Altai night is deepening outside, making the interior of the stable feel like a precious glowing ember. You find yourself leaning your forehead against the pony's side for a second, closing your eyes. The world of 1200 is a world of physical tactile reality. You feel the roughness of the cedar logs behind you, the softness of the straw beneath your knees, and the immense vibrating presence of the horse beside you. There are no echoes of the outside world here, no politics, no distant wars, no demands of the tribe, only the duty of care. You realize that this moment of grooming is perhaps the most honest thing you will do all year. It is an act of pure presence, a rejection of the hurry that often defines human life. As you stand up to move toward the face, the pony nuzzles your pocket, looking for a treat of dried apple or a bit of salt. You laugh quietly, the sound muffled by the thick air. You run your hand over his velvet muzzle, the skin there so soft it feels like expensive silk from the southern trade routes. You use a soft cloth now, gently wiping away the dust from around his eyes and nostrils. He sighs, a long, whistling sound that seems to deflate his entire body. The bond is palpable. It is a golden thread connecting your spirit to his, woven through the hours of travel and the quiet moments of the stable. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in this stillness, you are both exactly where you are meant to be. The brush rests in your hand, its work nearly done, but the peace it has created lingers on, thick and sweet as the mountain hay. The final phase of the grooming begins with the face, the most expressive and sensitive part of the mountain pony. You set aside the heavy birch brush and take up a piece of soft, undyed wool. The pony watches you with a wide, dark eye, the pupil a deep well of ancient recognition. As you gently wipe the dust from the bridge of his nose, he exhales a warm, moist cloud of breath that smells of the high summer pastures, a ghost of green grass in the middle of a white winter. You move the cloth in slow, circular motions over his forehead, tracing the bony structure that protects a brain hardwired for mountain survival. He lowers his head, pressing his forehead into your chest, a gesture of absolute trust that nearly pushes you off balance. In the year 1200, such a bond is not a luxury. It is the difference between life and death on the treacherous slopes of the Altai. As you work around the sensitive skin of his ears, you listen to the subtle music of the stable. The wind outside has found a gap in the rocks and is whistling a haunting, high-pitched melody, but it cannot penetrate the thick, moss-choked seams of the log walls. Inside, the only sounds are the rhythmic chewing of a horse in the next stall, the occasional crackle of the dying hearth fire, and the steady grounding thrum of the pony's heart. This is the sanctuary you have built together. Every stroke of the cloth is a promise kept. You are telling him, without words, that he is safe, that he is fed, and that he is valued. The world may be a place of harsh winters and endless horizons, but for this hour, the horizon is no further than these wooden walls. You find yourself mesmerized by the way the lamplight plays across the pony's coat. Where you have brushed him, the fur now has a healthy, deep luster, reflecting the amber light like polished stone. The dander and trail dust are gone, replaced by the natural oils that will protect him from the damp. You take a moment to simply stand there, your hand resting flat against his neck. You can feel the blood moving through his veins, the heat of his life force radiating into your palm. It is a humbling sensation. This animal, capable of carrying a man over the roof of the world, is content to stand in the shadows and enjoy the simple touch of a human hand. The companionship is a quiet, heavy thing, filling the space between you with a sense of profound peace. As the grooming comes to a close, you take one last look at the sanctuary you've shared. If you find peace in these historical whispers and the rhythmic calm of the stable, please consider subscribing to our channel and liking this video. Your support helps us bring more of these forgotten moments to life, preserving the stillness of the past for the busy world of today. The pony gives one final vigorous shake of his head, his ears flopping with a rhythmic slap-slap sound, and then he settles back into his resting stance, one hind leg cocked, his eyes half closed. The work is done. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in this golden, dusty silence, you have found the true meaning of the Altai. The brush is put away, but the bond remains, as solid and enduring as the mountains themselves. The grooming may be finished, but the connection keeps you anchored to the spot. You lean against the rough-hewn cedar post of the stall, watching the pony drift into a light sleep. His breathing has become even deeper now, a slow oceanic swell that fills the small space. Each exhale sends a faint ripple through the long hairs of his mane. You realize that in this stillness your own pulse has slowed to match his. The frantic internal monologue of the day, the mental maps of the mountain passes, the counting of grain sacks, the vigilance against the cold has been replaced by a singular focused presence. You are no longer thinking about the future or the past. You are simply existing in the year 1200, within a fortress of wood and hay. You reach down and pick up a handful of the dried mountain hay from the manger. It is coarse and golden, harvested during the short, intense Altai summer when the sun feels close enough to touch. As you crush the stalks in your hand, the scent of dried clover and wild timothy grass explodes into the air, a fragrant memory of warmer days. You offer it to the pony on your open palm. He wakes instantly, his velvet muzzle tickling your skin as he delicately gathers the offering. The sound of his chewing, a rhythmic grinding crunch, 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 is incredibly satisfying. It is the sound of life sustaining itself, a domestic music that has echoed through these mountains for millennia. In the shadows of the stable, you see the silhouettes of your gear, the heavy wooden saddle with its high pommel, the felt saddlecloths dyed in deep indigos and madders, and the coils of rawhide rope. They look different now, stripped of their utility and resting in the amber gloom. They are the tools of your survival, but they are also artifacts of a culture that respects the animal above all else. Without the horse, the rider is a ghost in the snow. Without the rider, the horse is a wild thing subject to the wolf. Together you are a single unit of movement and warmth. You run your fingers over the edge of a saddlecloth, feeling the density of the wool, and you think of the hands that felted it, the women of the tribe singing as they worked the fibers. Every object here tells a story of interdependence. The oil lamp flickers, its wick nearing the end of its strength. The shadows deepen, turning the corners of the stable into fathomless pits of black, while the center of the stall remains a warm, glowing island. You feel a profound sense of gratitude for this simple structure. Outside the Altai is a landscape of extremes, a place where the wind can strip the skin and the cold can stop the heart, but inside the thick logs and the presence of the pony have created a pocket of mercy. You are reminded that humanity's greatest triumphs aren't always found in conquest or architecture, but in these quiet victories over the environment, the ability to find warmth, to foster trust, and to share a moment of peace with another living soul. You take a final soft cloth and wipe a stray bit of hay from the pony's forehead. He leans into your hand one last time, his skin warm and solid. The silence is now total, save for the muffled heartbeat of the mountain. You prepare to leave the stall, moving with the same slow, respectful grace you've maintained all afternoon. Sleepy History with Tales is a sleep history storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. As you step away, you carry the warmth of the stable with you, a glowing coal in your heart that will light the long, dark mountain night. The world outside may be vast and cold, but here, in the year 1200, the hush of the brush and the breath of the horse have created a sanctuary that time itself cannot touch. The lamplight begins to fade, its orange flame shrinking to a tiny, pulsing bead of light, but your eyes have long since adjusted to the velvety darkness of the stable. Even in the near blackness, you can feel the pony's presence. It is a physical weight, a thermal bloom in the chilly air. You reach out one last time, not to brush or to clean, but simply to acknowledge the space between you. Your palm finds his shoulder and you feel the slight twitch of his skin, a reflexive, sensitive response that tells you he is still aware of you even as he dozes. This is the language of the Altai, subtle, tactile, and rooted in the immediate. In this world of 1200, there are no clocks to measure the passage of these minutes, only the slow transition of the pony from alertness to a state of profound rest. You move toward the small wooden stool in the corner and sit for a moment, letting the silence settle over you like a heavy cloak. The floor is covered in a thick layer of old straw and wood shavings, which insulate your boots from the frozen ground beneath. From this lower vantage point, the pony looks like a mountain himself, a dark, jagged silhouette against the slightly lighter grey of the log walls. You listen to the sounds of the other animals in the distance. Somewhere at the far end of the long stable, a mare stamps a foot, the sound echoing with a hollow, wooden resonance. Her foal let out a soft, high-pitched nicker, answered by the low, vibrating rumble of its mother. These are the sounds of a community huddled together against the cosmic cold of the Siberian night. As you sit, your mind wanders to the journey that brought you here. You think of the high ridges where the air is so thin it tastes like needles, and the hidden valleys where the grass grows taller than a man's waist. You remember the sound of this pony's hooves on the ancient stone paths, a rhythmic clatter that was the only music you had for days. Every mile of that journey is now distilled into this moment of stillness. The horse's muscles, which were taut and strained by the climb, are now loose and heavy. The dust of the trail has been replaced by the scent of the stable. It is a transition from the world of doing to the world of being. In the Altai, the stable is not just a place to store an animal, it is a recovery ward for the soul. The air has grown even colder, and you can see your own breath now, a faint ghostly wisp that mimics the larger plumes coming from the pony. You pull your sheepskin coat tighter around your shoulders, the wool still smelling of the wood smoke from the camp earlier today. You realize that you are part of a cycle that has repeated for centuries. The riders of the past sat in these same shadows, felt this same cold, and cherished this same warmth. There is a strange comfort in that continuity. You are not alone in this silence. You are surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 winters, all of them finding peace in the presence of their horses. You stand up, your joints making a soft popping sound in the quiet. The pony opens one eye, the dark orb catching a tiny glint of the dying lamp. He doesn't move, but you feel his focus shift back to you. You walk over to the heavy wooden bucket near the door and check the water. It hasn't frozen yet, thanks to the collective heat of the animals, but a thin rim of ice is beginning to form around the edges. You break it with your thumb, the sound like cracking glass. It is a small task, a tiny detail of survival, but it feels significant. Everything in this space matters. Every action is a link in the chain of life. You return to the pony's side and give him a final firm pat on the neck. The skin is thick and tough, a testament to his resilience. You turn to leave, moving toward the heavy door that separates this warm, dusty haven from the howling wilderness outside. The rhythm of the brush is over, but the resonance of the hush remains in your mind, a steady beat that will carry you through the night and into the first light of the mountain morning. As you linger by the heavy door, the transition back to the world of ice feels almost impossible. The interior of the stable has become a cocoon, a world where the only currency is the steady exchange of warmth and breath. You look back at the pony one last time. He has shifted his position slightly, tucking his muzzle into the hollow of his chest, seeking the deepest pocket of his own heat. The long, coarse hairs of his tail occasionally flick against the straw, a sound so faint it is more a vibration than a noise. In the dimness, the textures of the stable, the rough bark of the cedar logs, the frayed edges of the rawhide tethers, the polished smoothness of the manger's rim, seem to tell the story of every season they have endured. This wood has seen the birth of foals and the weary return of warriors. It has absorbed the sweat of 1,000 summers and the frost of 1,000 winters. You reach into the shadows and find a heavy felt blanket, thick and dense, woven from the wool of the very sheep that graze these same slopes with a slow, practiced motion. You drape it over the pony's back. He doesn't startle, he simply accepts the extra weight as another layer of security. You smooth the fabric with your hands, feeling the lanolin in the wool and natural water repellent that smells of the earth. This blanket is more than just a covering, it is a piece of home. Every thread was spun with the intention of keeping the cold at bay. As you tuck the edges around his flanks, the pony lets out a soft, appreciative grunt, a low-frequency sound that resonates through your chest. The connection between you is no longer just about the work of the day, it has become a shared pact of survival. The silence of the year 1200 is not a void. It is a presence that demands your attention. Without the constant noise of a mechanical world, your senses have sharpened to the point where you can hear the settling of the mountain itself. You hear the microscopic groan of the snow-laden branches outside, and the soft tick-tick of falling ice against the stable's stone foundation. Inside, the pony's slow, rhythmic chewing of the last few strands of hay provides a steady grounding counterpoint to the wild elements. You find yourself standing perfectly still, your hand resting on the latch of the door, unwilling to break the spell. This moment is a rare gift in a life defined by movement. It is the realization that the destination was never a place on a map, but this very feeling of being anchored, safe, and understood by a creature that knows no words. You think of the vastness of the Altai Mountain stretching out beyond these walls, peak after peak of jagged granite and eternal snow, home to the snow leopard and the golden eagle. In that immense, unforgiving landscape, this small wooden box is a miracle of human and animal collaboration. The pony's strength and the rider's care are the two pillars that hold up the roof of this sanctuary. You realize that the bond you have reinforced today with the brush and the cloth is what allows you to cross those peaks. It is a relationship forged in the fire of mutual necessity and tempered in the cool golden light of the stable. The hush-hush of the grooming ritual has cleared away more than just dust. It has cleared away the clutter of the ego, leaving only the essential truth of companionship. The last glow of the oil lamp finally dies out, leaving the stable in a deep sapphire-hued darkness. Yet you are not afraid. You know exactly where everything is: the curve of the pony's neck, the placement of the water bucket, the path to the door. Your heart is full of the quiet strength you have drawn from this animal. Sleepy History with Tales combines the power of AI to reimagine fictional historical tales, bringing peace, relaxation, and positive emotional values to our listeners. As you finally press your weight against the door to exit, a sliver of the frozen mountain air cuts through the warmth, but it no longer feels threatening. You carry the stillness of the grooming session with you like an invisible armor. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in the heart of the Altai you have found a peace that will endure long after the snow has melted and the spring grass has begun to rise. The heavy door creaks on its iron hinges as you step out just an inch, looking back one final time into the velvet darkness of the stall. The pony is now a shadow within shadows, but you can still hear the rhythmic, wet sound of his breathing, a steady reminder of the life that sustains your own in this high-altitude wilderness. The cold from the outside begins to snake around your ankles, a sharp contrast to the thick, aromatic warmth you have spent the last few hours cultivating. It is a transition between two worlds, the internal world of the stable governed by touch and care, and the external world of the Altai governed by the raw, indifferent laws of nature. You pull the door shut with a heavy thud, the latch clicking into place like the final note of a long, peaceful song. Standing just outside the stable, you are greeted by a sky so clear and deep it feels as though you could fall into the stars. In the year 1200, the heavens are not obscured by the glow of cities. They are a brilliant, crowded tapestry of light that seems to press down upon the mountain peaks. The Milky Way is a river of silver fire flowing across the jagged horizon. Even here, in the biting cold, the peace you found inside the stable remains with you. Your hands are still warm from the pony's coat, and the scent of hay and cedar clings to your clothes like a protective charm. You breathe in the mountain air, sharp, thin, and pure, and feel the expansion of your lungs. A mirror to the deep breaths the pony took under the pressure of your brush. As you walk toward your own quarters, your boots crunching on the frozen crust of the snow, you realize that the bond formed in that stable is the quiet engine of history. While empires rise and fall in the valleys far below, and while the great Khans plan their vast movements across the steppes, the fundamental reality of life remains this: a man, a horse, and the care they provide for one another. If this journey into the stillness of the past has brought you a sense of calm and perspective, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Your engagement helps us continue to tell these stories of ancient companionship and quiet moments that the history books often forget. The path to your cabin is short, but every step feels deliberate. You look toward the horizon where the moon is beginning to rise, casting a ghostly blue light over the frozen ridges. The mountains look like sleeping giants draped in blankets of snow. You feel small in their presence yet significant because of the task you have just completed. You have ensured the comfort of a fellow living creature. You have honored a pact that is as old as the mountains themselves. The hush-hush of the brush still echoes in your ears, a rhythmic mantra that drowns out the howling wind. It is the sound of patience, the sound of loyalty, and the sound of a world that, for all its harshness, still has room for a moment of pure, unadulterated peace. Inside your own small shelter, the fire has burned down to a bed of glowing red coals. You sit on the edge of your bed of furs, the silence of the night wrapping around you. You think of the pony back in the stable, safe under his felt blanket, his muscles finally at rest. Tomorrow, the sun will rise over the Altai, and the journey will begin anew. There will be rivers to cross, ridges to climb, and winds to endure. But for tonight, the work is done. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in that stillness, you have found a clarity that only the mountains can provide. You close your eyes, the image of the golden dust motes dancing in the stable light lingering behind your eyelids, and you drift towards sleep, anchored by the memory of a horse's breath and the warmth of a bond that time can never erase. The night deepens, but your mind remains tethered to the quiet architecture of the stable. In your small cabin, the logs occasionally pop as the residual heat of the fire escapes into the freezing room. You find yourself staring at the embers, the orange light reflecting in your eyes just as the lamplight had reflected in the pony's. You can still feel the physical sensation of the grooming brush in your palm, the weight of the wood, the resistance of the thick fur, the slight vibration of the horse's skin. It is a phantom limb of sorts, a lingering connection to the animal that is resting only a few dozen paces away. In the year 1200, life is a series of these physical impressions, deep grooves worn into the soul by the repetitive acts of survival and service. The stillness of the Altai is unlike any other silence. It is heavy, almost liquid, filling every crevice of the mountain. In the absence of sound, your memories of the afternoon become more vivid. You recall the way the pony's ear swiveled back to catch the sound of your voice, even when you were only whispering nonsense to keep the rhythm. You remember the specific smell of the dust that rose from his coat, a scent that contained traces of the high-altitude soil, the salt of his sweat, and the dry, sweet essence of the summer grasses he had grazed weeks ago. These are the sensory markers of a life lived in harmony with the seasons. They are more real than any gold or silk, for they represent the immediate, pulsing reality of existence. As you lie back on your furs, the cold air above your face is sharp, but your body remains warm, still glowing from the exertion of the grooming. You think about the structure of the stable again, those massive hand-felled logs that have stood for decades. They are the silent witnesses to countless such afternoons. They have absorbed the breath of hundreds of horses, and the quiet thoughts of dozens of riders. In the Altai, buildings are not just shelters, they are repositories of shared life. Every notch in the wood, every layer of moss packed into the seams was an act of foresight, a preparation for the very cold that is currently trying to claw its way inside. You feel a deep respect for the ancestors who understood that in this environment, softness is only possible because of a very hard, deliberate exterior. The pony, too, is a masterpiece of such preparation. You imagine him now, standing in the dark, his heart beating a slow, steady 40 beats per minute. His digestive system is working through the mountain hay, turning it into the internal heat that will keep him alive through a night where the temperature might drop to 40 degrees below freezing. There is an incredible quiet dignity in that biological process. He does not complain about the cold, he simply exists within it, fueled by the care you provided. This realization brings a sense of proportion to your own life. Your struggles, your fears, your ambitions, they all seem small compared to the fundamental elegance of a horse surviving a mountain winter. You find yourself breathing in a slow, rhythmic pattern, unconsciously mimicking the hush-hush of the brushstrokes. It has become a meditative tool, a way to navigate the transition into sleep. You are no longer an individual with a name and a destination. You are part of the pulse of the mountain. You are a link in a chain of riders and horses that stretches back to the dawn of memory and forward into an unknown future. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in this frozen moment of the 13th century, you are exactly where you belong. The memory of the pony's warmth is a shield against the dark, and the rhythm of your shared breath is the only map you need to navigate the night. The stillness is total, the peace is absolute, and the mountains watch over you both with a cold, starry indifference that somehow feels like a blessing. In the depths of the night, the cabin walls seem to grow thinner as the cold intensifies, but the memory of the stable's warmth serves as a spiritual hearth. You lie there, listening to the mountain. A glacier somewhere miles away groans under its own immense weight, a sound like distant thunder trapped beneath the earth. It is a reminder that the Altai is a living, moving giant, even when it appears frozen in time, yet your mind keeps returning to the small, stable-bound world you just left. You think of the pony's hooves now resting on the dry straw. Those hooves have a language of their own, the sharp clack on granite, the muffled thud on forest loam, and the rhythmic crunch through deep, crusty snow. Today you cleaned the stones from their crevices, a small act of mercy that ensures he will walk without pain tomorrow. Every detail of the grooming session feels like a precious stone you're turning over in your mind. You remember the texture of the pony's muzzle again, the way the skin transitions from the coarse, protective hair of the face to that impossibly soft, sensitive grey skin around the nostrils. It is there that the horse senses the world most acutely, picking up the scents of distant predators, the approach of rain, or the familiar smell of his rider. As you brushed him, you were careful to avoid the sensitive whiskers, the vibrissae that act as his radar in the dark. In the year 1200, understanding these nuances isn't just a hobby, it is the fundamental literacy of a horseman. You are reading the animal just as a scholar reads a scroll, deciphering the signs of health, fatigue, and spirit. The darkness in the room is now so thick it feels tactile, like the heavy felt of your blankets. You find yourself reflecting on the silence. It isn't a lonely silence. In the modern world, silence is often feared, filled with the hum of anxiety or the need for distraction. But here in the heart of the Altai, silence is a resource. It is the medium through which you hear the truth of the environment. Because you were silent while brushing the horse, you could hear the subtle change in his respiration that told you he was relaxing. You could hear the way his muscles softened under the brush. You could hear the shifting of the wind against the logs. This silence is a teacher, and today you were an attentive student. The fire in your hearth is now nothing more than a faint red eye in the gloom, but you don't feel the need to stoke it. The peace you carried from the stable is a thermal layer of its own. You think of the pony's winter coat once more. It is a miracle of nature, a dual-layer system where the fine down traps air warmed by the body and the long guard hairs shed moisture. It is the original inspiration for the very clothes you wear. Your own sheepskin coat and felt boots are simply human attempts to mimic the horse's natural perfection. In this way, the horse is not just your transport, he is your instructor in the art of survival. You are learning how to be at home in a world that offers no hospitality to the unprepared. As sleep finally begins to pull at your consciousness, you feel a sense of completion. The hush-hush of the brush has become the rhythm of your thoughts, a steady, pulsing beat that smooths out the jagged edges of your worries. You imagine the stable once more, the rows of sturdy ponies all standing in the dark, their collective breath creating a microclimate of life amidst the ice. You are part of that warmth. You are a guardian of that flame. The world has slowed to a standstill, and as you drift into the quiet unknown of the night, you carry the golden light of the stable with you. The bond between species, the rhythm of the brush, and the vast silent mountains are all woven together into a single, unbreakable thread of existence. The transition into deep sleep is heralded by a final fading awareness of the cabin's scent, wood smoke and cold wool, but your subconscious remains firmly planted in the stable. In your dreams, the rhythmic hush-hush of the brush transforms into the sound of the wind moving through the high-altitude pines. It is a seamless transition, for the horse is as much a product of this landscape as the trees and the stones. You see the pony in the eye of your mind, his coat shimmering with that newfound luster you worked so hard to achieve. In this dream state, the amber light of the oil lamp expands, filling the entire mountain range with a soft, protective glow. You are no longer just a rider, you are a weaver of comfort, interlacing the harshness of the 13th century winter with the soft threads of human empathy. The physical memory of the horse's flank remains pressed against your hand even in sleep. You feel the slow rise and fall of his ribs, a movement like the tide of a silent inland sea. This is the ultimate form of rest, a state where the boundaries between the self and the surroundings begin to blur. In the year 1200, the survival of the individual is secondary to the survival of the bond. If the horse thrives, the rider survives. If the rider cares, the horse persists. It is a beautiful, brutal symmetry. You find yourself drifting deeper, leaving the cold air of the room behind and sinking into the warmth of that shared biological fire. The silence of the Altai is no longer a distance to be crossed, but a home to be inhabited. As the small hours of the morning approach, the temperature outside drops to its lowest point. The cedar logs of the cabin contract with sharp, sudden cracks that sound like pistol shots in the quiet, yet you do not startle. You are anchored by the weight of your own history, by the hours spent in the dust and the hay. You know that the stable is holding. You know that the moss-stuffed seams are doing their work. You know that the pony is standing there, a mountain of fur and muscle, waiting for the first grey light to touch the peaks. This certainty is a luxury that few in this era possess, the certainty of a task well done and a companion well cared for. You imagine the frost forming on the outside of the stable doors, delicate crystalline structures growing like ferns across the wood. Inside, the frost cannot take hold. The air is too alive, too thick with the exhalations of the herd. You see the dust motes you stirred up earlier. They have likely settled now, a thin layer of mountain gold resting on the rafters and the manes of the sleeping horses. Everything is in its place. The brush is on its hook, the bucket is in its corner, and the bond is etched into the very atmosphere of the room. The hush of the afternoon has become the hush of the night, a universal language of peace that transcends the need for speech or sight. In this state of total stillness, you realize that the world has not just slowed to a standstill, it has reached a state of perfection. There is nothing to add and nothing to take away. The simplicity of the act, brushing a horse, has provided a doorway into the eternal. You are a nomad, a traveler, a survivor. But in this moment you are simply a witness to the beauty of existence. The Altai Mountains stand guard over your sleep, their peaks touching the stars, while in the valley of your dreams a single pony breathes in the dark, safe and warm and clean. The rhythm of life continues, a steady, invisible pulse that carries you toward the dawn, wrapped in the enduring silence of 1,000 years ago. The pre-dawn hour in the Altai is a time of deep indigo shadows and a cold so profound it seems to vibrate. Inside your shelter, the last of the embers have faded to grey ash, yet the internal warmth from your time in the stable remains a steady, glowing core within you. You stir beneath your heavy furs, the memory of the pony's rhythmic breathing acting as a tether to reality. In the year 1200, the morning does not begin with the ringing of a bell or the flash of a light, but with the subtle shift in the air and the first faint stirrings of the animals. You can almost feel the pony waking in his stall, his ears pricking toward the heavy door, listening for the familiar crunch of your boots on the frozen earth. This period of transition, between the deep sleep of the night and the harsh demands of the mountain day, is where the bond is truly felt. You lie still for a moment, tracing the mental map of the stable once more. You can see the way the frost has lightly feathered the edges of the high window slits, and how the pony's coat, so carefully smoothed and cleaned, now stands slightly on end to trap the maximum amount of body heat. The hush-hush of yesterday's brush is now a silent memory, but its effect is a physical shield. By removing the salt and the dirt, you have allowed his natural insulation to function at its peak. You have given him the gift of comfort, and in return he gives you the possibility of another day's journey. As you prepare to rise, you reflect on the sheer endurance required of the mountain people and their steeds. This is a land that does not forgive mistakes, yet it rewards the patient and the diligent. The act of grooming was not just about aesthetics, it was a check for injuries, a massage for tired muscles, and a reinforcement of the hierarchy of trust. If you appreciate these deep dives into the quiet, essential moments of human and animal history, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Your support allows us to continue exploring the hushed corners of the past, where the most meaningful stories are often told without a single word being spoken. The first glimmer of grey light begins to seep through the cracks in the cabin walls. It is a cold, pale light, but it signals the end of the night's isolation. You reach for your felt boots, which are stiff with the cold, and begin the process of dressing. Every layer you put on is a tribute to the wisdom of the steppes, wool, leather, and fur. As you pull on your heavy coat, you catch the faint scent of the stable still lingering in the fibers of your sleeve. It is a comforting smell, a reminder that you are not alone in this vast vertical world. The pony is waiting. The mountains are waiting. The rhythm of the brush will be replaced today by the rhythm of the trail, but the peace you cultivated in the amber light of the stable will remain the foundation of every step you take. You stand up and stretch, feeling the blood return to your limbs. The world outside is still locked in a frozen silence, but inside your heart, the hush-hush continues. It is a steadying force, a reminder that even in a world of 1200, a world of constant movement and survival, there is always a place for stillness. There is always a moment for the brush. There is always a space for the breath of a horse. You head toward the door, ready to face the Altai morning, carrying the sanctuary of the stable within you like a hidden flame. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in that stillness you have found the strength to move again. As you push the cabin door open, the Altai morning greets you with a slap of air so cold it feels like drinking liquid silver. The world is a study in monochrome shades of blue, slate, and bone white, but your destination is the one place where color and warmth still reside. The walk back to the stable is short, yet in the thin air, every breath you take is a deliberate act. The snow beneath your feet doesn't just crunch, it shrieks, a high-pitched protest against the weight of your boots. You look toward the stable, that fortress of cedar and moss, and see the faint wisps of steam escaping from the roof vents. It looks like the building itself is breathing, a giant wooden lung keeping the heart of the mountain beating. Reaching the heavy larch door, you pause. This is the moment of return. You lift the latch, and as the door swings inward, the familiar sensory embrace of the interior rushes out to meet you. It is warmer than you remembered. The collective body heat of the horses has maintained a steady, comfortable microclimate through the sub-zero night. The smell hits you first, that wonderful complex perfume of fermented hay, dry earth, and the sweet, clean scent of the horses you spent so much time grooming yesterday. It feels like coming home. The pony hears you before he sees you. You hear the shift of straw, a low, inquisitive nicker, and the steady thump-thump of a tail against a wooden partition. You walk toward his stall, and there he is, standing exactly as you left him. Though his coat is perhaps a bit more ruffled from a night of rest, the amber light is beginning to return as you strike a fresh flint to the oil lamp. As the flame catches the pony's coat, the one you labored over catches the light even after a night in the straw, the luster remains. You see the deep, rich dun color of his fur, free of the grit and salt that had plagued him the day before. He looks refreshed, his eyes bright and clear, watching your every move with a mixture of intelligence and expectation. He knows the routine. He knows that the hand that brushes is also the hand that feeds and the hand that leads. You pick up the birch brush again, not because he is dirty, but to wake up his skin and muscles for the day ahead. This morning's hush-hush is different. It is more energetic, a rhythmic wake-up call. The pony leans into it immediately, his neck stretching out in a long, elegant line. You can feel the suppleness of his muscles beneath the fur. The stiffness of the trail has been worked out, replaced by a ready, coiled power. As you work the brush along his spine, you think of the sheer distance this animal is capable of covering. In the year 1200, a horse like this is more than transport. He is a lifeline, a bridge between isolated communities, and a companion in the loneliest of landscapes. The stable begins to wake up around you. Other riders are entering, the sounds of low murmurs and the clinking of bridles filling the air. But you remain focused on your corner of the world. You move to the pony's head, rubbing his ears and feeling the heat radiating from them. He closes his eyes, savoring the attention. There is a profound sense of continuity here. This exact scene has played out for centuries and will continue for centuries more. The tools might change, the empires might shift, but the physical reality of a human caring for a horse in a mountain stable is an eternal truth. The world outside may be waking up to the chaos of a new day, but here, inside these thick walls, the pace is still dictated by the rhythm of the brush and the steady, calm pulse of the animal. You are ready for the Altai, and more importantly, the pony is ready for you. The morning ritual deepens as you move the brush with a more vigorous intent. This is the activation of the blood, a necessary awakening before the pony faces the biting frost of the high passes. You can see the steam rising from his back where the brush creates friction, a ghostly aura that surrounds his powerful frame. In the year 1200, every action has a dual purpose. It is both a mechanical necessity and a spiritual grounding. As the bristles track over his ribs, you feel the expansion of his lungs, the sheer volume of air he processes to keep his internal furnace burning. The hush-hush sound is sharper now, echoing off the frost-rimed cedar walls, a confident announcement that the day has truly begun. The pony turns his head to watch you, his muzzle occasionally grazing your shoulder. There is no urgency in his gaze, only a calm acceptance of the partnership. You notice how the light from the oil lamp reflects in the liquid depth of his eye, a tiny flickering universe of gold set against the deep obsidian of his iris. You are struck by the silence of the other horses. They too are being tended to, their riders moving with the same practiced economical grace. This is the collective labor of a mountain people. There is no need for loud commands or heavy-handedness. The relationship is built on 1,000 tiny gestures, 1,000 moments like this one, where the brush becomes the primary instrument of communication. You move to the front legs again, checking each hoof with a keen eye. Yesterday's cleaning has kept the frogs of his feet healthy and dry. You run your hand down the cannon bone, feeling for any heat or swelling that might signal a future lameness. The pony stands like a statue, trusting your touch. This level of stillness in an animal that is essentially a creature of flight is a testament to the safety he feels within these walls. The Altai stable is more than a barn, it is a treaty house here. The wildness of the horse and the ambition of the human meet in a middle ground of mutual respect. You feel the grit of the stable floor beneath your own feet, a mixture of earth and old straw that has been packed into a floor as hard as stone over years of use. As you finish the final pass of the brush over his haunches, the pony gives a low, vibrating whinny that echoes in the rafters. It is a sound of readiness. You set the brush down on the familiar wooden ledge, its handle smooth and warm from your grip. The air in the stable is now a swirl of activity as the first light of the sun finally hits the high windows, turning the dust motes into a flurry of white sparks. The blue shadows of the night are retreating, replaced by the harsh, honest light of a mountain morning. You take a moment to simply stand with him, your hand resting on his forehead. You are both standing at the threshold of the unknown, ready to climb toward the sky. The world outside the heavy larch doors is no longer a silent void, it is a challenge. You can hear the wind picking up, beginning its daily patrol of the granite peaks. But the peace you have cultivated in this small stall remains unshaken. You have prepared the horse, and in doing so you have prepared yourself. The rhythm of the brush has entered your blood, a steadying beat that will stay with you even when the trail turns steep and the wind tries to steal your breath. You reach for the bridle, the cold iron bits clinking softly. But before you slip it on, you share one last breath of stillness with the mountain pony. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in this golden, dusty temple of wood and straw, you have found the only truth that matters. The bond is strong, the horse is ready, and the mountain is waiting. The transition from the brush to the tack is a delicate shift in the morning's energy. You reach for the saddle cloth, a thick piece of felted wool that you spent hours cleaning of burrs the night before. As you lay it across the pony's back, you feel the heat rising through the fabric. The horse adjusts his stance, his muscles rippling beneath the newly groomed fur. There is a specific scent to this moment, the smell of cold wool meeting warm skin, a sharp, clean aroma that signals the end of rest. In the year 1200, every piece of equipment is a handmade miracle born from the mountains themselves. The felt comes from the sheep, the leather from the cattle, and the wooden frame of the saddle from the sturdy birch of the lower valleys. You are dressing the pony in the very essence of his home. As you lift the saddle into place, you do so with a slow, deliberate strength. The wooden pommel catches the morning light, showing the intricate carvings of mountain spirits meant to guard the rider on dangerous paths. The horse lets out a long, huffing breath as the girth is loosely tightened. He is an old hand at this. He knows that the weight of the saddle is the price of the journey, a burden he carries with a stoic, mountainous dignity. You run your hand under the edges of the felt, ensuring there are no wrinkles that could chafe his skin during the long hours of climbing. Your fingers, calloused and toughened by the Altai wind, move with a gentleness that only comes from deep respect. The hush-hush of the brush has been replaced by the soft creak-creak of leather, but the spirit of the interaction remains the same. The stable around you is now a hive of quiet preparation. You hear the clink of metal bits against stone mangers and the low, guttural commands of other travelers. In this pre-dawn atmosphere, there is no room for ego or haste. To rush is to invite disaster on the high ridges. You take a moment to look at the pony's face again. His eyes are calm, watching the movement in the stable with a detached, ancient wisdom. He has seen 100 such mornings, and he will see 100 more. To him, the rider is a seasonal companion, a fleeting presence in the long life of the mountain. Yet he offers his strength with a generosity that is humbling. You realize that you are not his master, but his steward. The grooming you provided was not a command, but an offering. You reach for the bridle, the leather cold and stiff in your hands. You breathe on the iron bit to warm it, a small gesture of empathy that the pony acknowledges with a soft nudge of his nose. As the bit slides into place, he chews it gently, the sound of metal on tooth a sharp, rhythmic punctuation to the morning. You settle the headstall behind his ears, those sensitive points you handled so carefully with the soft cloth just an hour ago. He stands perfectly still, his head lowered in a gesture of submission that feels more like a shared agreement. The bond is sealed. You are no longer two separate entities, a human and a horse, but a single unified force of survival ready to face the Altai. The light in the stable has shifted from amber to a crisp, pale white as the sun finally clears the eastern peaks. The dust motes have settled and the air is clear and bracing. You take a final look around the stall. This small patch of earth and wood has been a cathedral of calm in a chaotic world. You feel the weight of the hush you created here, a heavy golden silence that you will carry with you like a talisman. The world outside may be a place of screaming winds and shifting snows, but the memory of the brush and the breath will be your anchor. You lead the pony toward the heavy door, the sound of his hooves on the hard-packed floor echoing like a heartbeat. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in this moment of departure you are the most grounded you have ever been. The threshold of the stable door is a thin line between two realities. As you lead the pony across the worn wooden sill, the biting cold of the mountain morning rushes in to meet you, instantly crystallizing the moisture in the air. The pony's first steps onto the frozen ground are cautious, his hooves making a sharp, metallic clack against the permafrost. You feel the horse's muscles tighten beneath your hand, a natural bracing against the sudden drop in temperature. Even out here, in the raw exposure of the Altai slopes, the bond formed in the dim light of the stall remains unbroken. You are still moving in the same slow, deliberate tempo that the grooming brush dictated. In the year 1200, the world does not demand speed, it demands resilience. You pause for a moment by the outer wall of the stable, letting the pony adjust to the change. The sun is now a blinding white disk hanging just above the jagged horizon, casting shadows that stretch for miles across the snow-choked valleys. The horse's coat, which you spent so much time tending to, looks almost ethereal in this light, each individual hair shimmering with a healthy oil that repels the frost. You reach up to adjust a strap on the saddle, and the warmth radiating from his neck is like a small private sun. It is a startling contrast to the frozen world around you. You realize that the horse is carrying a piece of the stable's sanctuary with him, tucked deep within his winter fur. The wind begins to pull at your heavy sheepskin collar, whispering of the high passes you must cross before sunset. These are the ridges where the air grows thin and the path becomes a narrow ribbon of shale and ice. But as you look at the pony, you feel no trepidation. You know every inch of his strength. You know the way he recovers his breath after a steep incline, and you know the steady rhythmic pace he can maintain for hours on end. This knowledge is the fruit of your labor in the stable. By taking the time to brush him, to touch him, and to listen to his breathing, you have learned the map of his spirit. You are not riding a beast of burden. You are riding a partner who understands the stakes of the journey as well as you do. You take the reins in your gloved hand, the leather feeling solid and familiar. There is a profound silence that falls over the mountain at this hour. A stillness so deep that the only sounds are your own heartbeat and the rhythmic huff-huff of the horse's nostrils. The world has slowed to a standstill, frozen in a masterpiece of ice and light. You find yourself reflecting on the simplicity of this life. There are no scrolls to sign, no taxes to calculate, no courtly intrigues to navigate. There is only the horse, the mountain, and the necessity of moving forward with care. The hush-hush of the stable has become the guiding philosophy of your entire existence. As you prepare to mount, you give the pony one last pat on his sturdy shoulder. The sound is a dull, reassuring thud against his thick winter coat. He turns his head slightly, his dark eye catching your reflection. There is a sense of mutual readiness that transcends language. You are both creatures of the Altai, bound by a history that stretches back through the centuries to the first nomad who ever reached out a hand to a wild mare. The stable is behind you now, a dark silhouette against the snow, but its lessons are etched into your movements. You swing yourself into the saddle, the wooden frame creaking in the cold, and for a moment you are the highest thing in the world. The journey begins not with a shout, but with a quiet, shared understanding that as long as you have each other, the mountain can be conquered. As you settle into the high pommel of the saddle, the world seems to expand in every direction. From this elevation, the Altai is a sea of frozen waves, peaks rising like white-crested breakers against a sky that is almost too blue to be real. You feel the pony shift beneath you, finding his balance on the uneven, icy terrain. The sensation is one of total integration because of the hours spent grooming him. You are acutely aware of the play of muscle in his hindquarters and the way his weight distributes through his legs. You aren't just sitting on a horse, you are a part of a moving system of warmth and power. In the year 1200, this connection is the most sophisticated technology on the planet, a biological alliance that allows humans to inhabit the uninhabitable. The pony takes his first purposeful step forward, and the rhythm of the trail begins. It is a slow, methodical pace, a steady four-beat walk that mirrors the hush-hush of the brush you used earlier. Each step is a calculation. He feels the ground through his hooves, testing the stability of the frozen earth before committing his full weight. You allow him his head, trusting his instincts. His ears are constantly moving, flicking back to listen for your signals, and then forward to scan the path ahead. This is the conversation that continues throughout the day, a silent dialogue of weight shifts, leg pressures, and the occasional soft word. The wind tries to drown everything out, but the bond you forged in the stillness of the stable is a frequency it cannot disrupt. As you move away from the shelter of the buildings, the scale of the landscape becomes overwhelming. The larch forests below look like tiny patches of moss, and the eagles circling above are mere specks against the sun. Yet, despite the vastness, you feel a strange sense of intimacy. The heat from the pony's body rises up through the saddle, warming your legs even as the mountain air tries to freeze your face. This pocket of warmth is your mobile sanctuary. You realize that the work you did in the stable, removing the dust, smoothing the fur, and checking for sores, was the most important preparation for this moment. A horse that is uncomfortable is a horse that is distracted, and in the Altai, distraction is a danger. Because he is clean and cared for, he is free to focus entirely on the trail. You pass a small, ancient cairn of stones, an ovu, decorated with weathered blue ribbons that snap in the wind. You pause the pony for a second to pay your respects to the mountain spirits. In the silence of the stop, you hear the horse's breathing again. It is deep and steady, a powerful engine working in perfect harmony with the thin atmosphere. You reach down and scratch him behind the ear, finding that soft spot you tended to with the cloth. He sighs, a long plume of white steam shooting from his nostrils. It is a moment of shared peace in the middle of a harsh wilderness. The world has slowed to a standstill, frozen in a crystalline beauty that takes your breath away. The trail ahead begins to climb, winding its way through a field of boulders fallen from the higher peaks. The pony handles the incline with a grit that is inspiring. He digs his hooves into the shale, his powerful neck lowering as he finds his leverage. You lean forward, shifting your weight to help him, your movements synchronized with his. This is the true meaning of companionship. It is not found in the easy times, but in the struggle against the slope. The memory of the quiet stable with its amber light and scent of hay feels like a distant dream now, yet it is the very thing that makes this reality possible. You are moving through the 13th century with a partner who will not fail you, because you did not fail him when the world was quiet. The journey continues, one steady, rhythmic step at a time, toward the roof of the world. The climb continues as the sun reaches its zenith, casting a harsh, flat light over the snowfields. The pony's breath has become a constant rhythmic labor, a soft huff-hush that matches the crunch of hooves on the thinning ice. You can feel the heat radiating from his neck, a tangible reminder of the energy he is expending to carry you upward. In the year 1200, there are no maps for the soul, only the physical reality of the slope and the trust between rider and mount. You notice how the sweat has begun to foam slightly, where the leather reins touch his neck, a sign of his exertion, but also of his vitality. Because you groomed him so thoroughly, you can monitor every change in his skin and coat, reading his physical state like a well-worn scroll. The silence of the high Altai is deceptive. It is not an absence of sound, but a collection of whispers, the rattle of a loose stone falling into a ravine, the creak of your wooden saddle, and the distant, lonely cry of a mountain hawk. These sounds only highlight the intimacy of your connection with the horse. You find yourself leaning down to whisper words of encouragement into his flicking ears, your voice barely a ripple in the vast, cold air. He responds not with speed, but with a steady, unwavering commitment to the next step. This is the endurance of the steppe, a quiet, stubborn strength that has defined life in these mountains for millennia. You are a part of that history now, a single heartbeat in the long, frozen memory of the range. As you crest a small ridge, a hidden valley opens up below you, filled with the dark, jagged shapes of ancient pines. The wind howls through the needles, a sound like a distant choir, but you feel insulated from the chaos. Your mind drifts back to the stable, the scent of the cedar logs, the golden dust motes, and the rhythmic hush of the brush. That memory is your internal compass. It reminds you that no matter how far you travel or how high you climb, there is always a place of stillness to return to. The work you did in the shadows of the stable was the anchor for this journey. You realize that the bond is not just about survival, it is about the grace found in the small acts of care that make survival possible. You stop the pony to let him rest for a few moments, his chest heaving in slow, powerful swells. You reach into your pack and find a small block of salt, offering it on your palm. He takes it with a gentle sandpaper tongue, his large dark eyes meeting yours. In that gaze there is a profound clarity. He knows you and you know him. The world has slowed to a standstill on this lonely ridge, suspended between the earth and the sky. You are two living spirits sharing a moment of respite in a world that is often indifferent to the individual. But here, in the shadow of the Altai peaks, the individual is everything. The journey will continue, the path will steepen, but the rhythm of the brush remains in your soul, a steady beat that promises warmth at the end of the day. As the sun begins its long, slow descent toward the western peaks, the light turns a deep, bruised purple, casting shadows that feel as heavy as the stone itself. The pony's pace remains unchanged, a testament to the deep reservoir of stamina you helped preserve through your care in the stable. His hooves find purchase in a patch of frozen moss, the green fibers peeking through the white crust like emeralds buried in salt. You feel the pony's weight shift as he navigates a narrow ledge where the path has been partially swept away by a recent rockfall. There is no hesitation in his movement, only a focused, quiet intensity. He trusts your hands on the reins to guide his balance, just as you trust his legs to carry your life over the abyss. In this fading light, the year 1200 feels less like a date and more like a state of being. You are stripped of the modern world's complexities, reduced to the essential elements of wind, wood, and wool. You think of the stable again, which by now must be filling with the blue gloom of evening. You imagine the other horses standing in their stalls, their heads drooping as they drift into that half-sleep you witnessed earlier. That sanctuary exists as a mental refuge for you now. Every time the wind bites through your coat or the path becomes treacherous, you conjure the image of the golden oil lamp and the rhythmic hush-hush of the brush. It is a psychological hearth that keeps your spirit from freezing. The descent into the next valley is steep, requiring you to sit back in the saddle, your weight anchored in the stirrups to assist the pony's braking. You can feel the heat of his exertion rising in great clouds of steam that briefly obscure your vision. He snorts, clearing his nostrils of the fine ice crystals that have formed from his own breath. This is the raw reality of the Altai, a cycle of heat and cold, effort and rest. You reach down to pat his neck and the fur is damp but warm. The luster you brought out with the grooming session is still there, even under the layer of trail dust. He is a magnificent creature, a mountain of bone and muscle that has become your entire world. As the first stars begin to prick through the deepening indigo of the sky, you see a faint, flickering light in the distance, the campfire of your destination. The pony sees it too. His ears prick forward, and his step lightens with the anticipation of a warm stall and a fresh manger of hay. You feel a surge of gratitude for this animal. He has carried you through the silence and the storm, never wavering, never complaining. The hush of the stable was the beginning of this day, and it will be the end of it. The journey through the 13th century is nearing its temporary conclusion, but the bond you have reinforced will remain, a steady pulse in the dark, reminding you that in the heart of the mountains you are never truly alone. The world has slowed to a standstill, and as you ride toward the welcoming glow of the fire, you carry the peace of the brush and the strength of the horse within you, a sacred trust that time can never diminish. The descent into the valley camp is a slow, rhythmic dance of shadows and firelight. As the pony approaches the flickering warmth of the settlement, his breathing levels out into a deep, satisfied hum. The campfire, fueled by dried dung and twisted pine branches, casts long orange fingers across the snow, welcoming you back from the isolation of the high ridges. In the year 1200, the sight of a fire at the end of a day's ride is more than just a convenience. It is the boundary between life and the crushing indifference of the mountain night. You pull back gently on the reins, and the pony comes to a halt with a soft huff of steam, his legs braced and steady after hours of unyielding effort. Dismounting is a slow process. Your limbs are stiff from the cold and the constant tension of the climb. As your boots hit the ground, the world feels solid and stable once again. But your first thought is not for your own comfort. You lead the pony toward a small lean-to structure fashioned from heavy felt and cedar poles. This is the makeshift stable of the camp, a temporary haven that smells of wood smoke and old wool. You begin the process of untacking, your fingers moving by memory even in the dim light. The saddle comes off with a heavy groan of leather, revealing the pony's back, still radiating a powerful primal heat. You see the sweat dampening his fur where the saddlecloth lay, and you immediately reach for a dry piece of burlap to rub him down. The hush-hush returns, though this time it is the sound of coarse fabric against tired muscle. You work with a steady circular motion, drying the sweat and massaging the areas where the girth and saddle sat. The pony leans his weight toward you, a sign of profound trust and exhaustion. This evening grooming is just as vital as the morning's preparation. It is the cooling down of the engine, the transition from the stress of the trail to the sanctuary of rest. You can feel his pulse slowing beneath your hand, his skin twitching as you work out the knots of the day. In this shared silence, the vastness of the Altai shrinks down to the small space between the two of you, a circle of warmth in an ocean of ice. You find a bucket of water that has been tempered by the fire, just enough to take the chill off. As the pony drinks, the rhythmic sound of his swallowing is the only music you need. You check his hooves one last time, clearing away the packed ice and sharp shale of the high pass. Every action is a repayment of a debt. He gave you his strength on the slopes now. You give him your care in the valley. You drape the heavy felt blanket over him once more, tucking the corners just as you did the night before. He is settled now, his head dipping toward a pile of sun-dried mountain grass, his spirit at peace. As you step away from the lean-to and move toward the main campfire, you look back at the dark silhouette of your companion. The day is done, the mountains have been crossed, and the bond remains the strongest thing in your world. The year 1200 fades into the background, leaving only the timeless reality of the rider and the horse. You sit by the fire, the heat finally reaching your bones, and close your eyes. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in the quiet pulse of the camp, you find the deep, restorative sleep of those who have fulfilled their promise to the creatures they lead. The rhythm of the brush is still in your hands, a silent promise of tomorrow's journey. The night in the valley camp settles into a deep, crystalline stillness. You lie by the embers of the communal fire, wrapped in layers of heavy fur, but your consciousness remains partially tethered to the lean-to where the pony rests. The transition from the exertion of the trail to the stillness of sleep is a slow drift through the memories of the day. In the year 1200, the boundaries between the human and the natural world are porous. You can feel the temperature drop through the soles of your feet and hear the shift of the wind in the pine needles as if it were your own breath. The hush-hush of the burlap against the pony's flank still resonates in your palms, a tactile ghost of the service you performed. The silence here is different from the silence of the high peaks on the ridges. The silence was sharp and aggressive, a void that seemed to pull at your heat. Here in the valley, the silence is padded by the presence of life. You hear the occasional crackle of the dying fire, the distant howl of a wolf that serves only to emphasize the safety of the camp, and the steady, reassuring sound of the horses chewing. That sound, the grinding of dry grass between powerful teeth, is the heartbeat of the camp. It signifies that the animals are recovered, their digestive fires stoked, and their spirits quieted. You find yourself matching your breathing to that slow, rhythmic grind, letting the simplicity of the horse's needs simplify your own. You think about the cycle of care that defines this nomadic existence. Tomorrow the sun will rise over the eastern wall of the valley, and the process will begin anew. The blanket will be folded, the brush will be retrieved from the pack, and the pony's coat will be readied for another layer of mountain dust. It is a life of repetition, yet it never feels stagnant. Each stroke of the brush is an act of presence, a way to anchor yourself in a world that is constantly shifting beneath your feet. The Altai demands everything from you, but in return it offers a clarity that is impossible to find in the crowded cities of the lowlands. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, a steward of a living creature, a witness to the ancient conversation between the earth and the sky. As the deep cold of the pre-dawn hours begins to creep into the camp, you pull the furs tighter around your chin. The memory of the pony's warmth, that dense, living furnace you felt while rubbing him down, stays with you. It is a shield against the frost. You realize that the bond you have nurtured is not just a tool for travel, but a spiritual necessity. Without the horse, the mountain is an impassable wall. With him, it is a home. The hush of the stable, the creak of the saddle, and the crunch of the snow have all merged into a single peaceful melody. The world has slowed to a standstill, and as you finally surrender to a dreamless sleep, you do so with the knowledge that the pony is safe, the fire is guarded, and the rhythm of the brush will be there to greet you when the light returns. The first pale sliver of dawn touches the rim of the valley, turning the frozen mist into a veil of floating diamonds. You awaken not to a sound, but to the sudden sharp drop in temperature that precedes the sunrise. Your breath forms a thick cloud in the air above your furs, and for a moment you lie perfectly still, listening to the world wake up. From the lean-to there is a low, rumbling groan, a horse stretching its stiff limbs after a night of bracing against the cold. It is your pony. The sound pulls you from the warmth of your bed, calling you back to the duty that defines your days. In the year 1200, the morning is a sacred contract. You provide the care, and the animal provides the way forward. Walking across the frosted grass, your boots make a sound like breaking glass. The air is so thin and pure it feels as though it could shatter. When you reach the pony, he is already waiting, his dark eyes tracking your movement through the shadows. The frost has settled on the tips of his ears, and the long hairs of his muzzle giving him the appearance of a creature made of ice and ancient stone. As you reach out to touch him, the heat radiating from beneath his felt blanket is a shock to your frozen fingers. You begin the morning hush-hush once more, using a stiff bristled brush to break the sleep-matted fur and stimulate the blood flow. Each stroke releases a small puff of steam, the horse's body reacting to the friction with a quiet, appreciative shiver. This morning's grooming is slow and methodical. You are looking for the small things, the slight swelling of a joint, a nick from a stray rock, or the way he favors one leg over the other, but there is nothing. The pony is as sturdy as the larch trees that cling to the cliffs. You move the brush in long sweeping motions from his neck to his haunches, feeling the power of his muscles as they wake up. The rhythmic sound of the bristles becomes the heartbeat of the morning, a steady pulse that pushes back the silence of the Altai. You are preparing him for the highest pass of the journey, a place where the wind never stops and the snow never melts. To face such a challenge, he must be more than just healthy, he must be perfectly attuned to you. As you work, the sun finally clears the peak, flooding the valley with a sudden golden warmth. The pony's coat ignites in the light, the deep browns and ambers of his fur glowing like polished mahogany. You set down the brush and pick up a soft cloth to wipe away the last of the dust from his eyes and nostrils. He nuzzles your chest, his breath warm and smelling of the dry mountain hay. In this moment the world has slowed to a standstill. There is no past and no future, only the golden light, the smell of the horse, and the steady hush of the morning ritual. You are a nomad of the 13th century, a soul tied to the rhythm of the seasons and the heartbeat of a beast. The journey ahead is long, and the mountains are unforgiving. But as you prepare to saddle up, you know that the bond you have polished this morning is the only map you will ever need. The climb out of the valley begins under a sky so vast it feels as though the blue might pour down and drown the mountains. As you lead the pony onto the upward trail, the transition from the soft floor of the campsite to the unyielding granite of the higher slopes is immediate. The rhythmic hush-hush of the morning brush has now become the rhythmic clink-scrape of iron-shod hooves finding purchase on slate. You walk beside him for the first mile to let his joints warm naturally, your hand resting lightly on the pommel of the saddle. You can feel the engine of his body working, the heat rising from his shoulders, the steady, powerful thrum of his heart. In the year 1200, time is measured not by minutes, but by the distance covered between heartbeats. The trail narrows as you ascend, a winding staircase of stone that clings to the ribs of the mountain. You mount the pony as the path becomes too steep for a human on foot to maintain pace. Beneath you, the horse is a marvel of biological engineering. His center of gravity shifts with every pebble, his muscles tensing and releasing with a fluidity that no machine could ever replicate. You find yourself leaning forward, your chest almost touching his mane, sinking your breath with his. The hush of his exhalations is the only sound in the world now, a white plume of steam that trails behind you like a ghost. This is the ultimate expression of the bond you cultivated in the stable. You are no longer two separate lives, but a single focused arrow aimed at the summit. Halfway up the pass, the wind begins to scream through the narrow rock chimneys. It is a cold, predatory wind that seeks out the gaps in your furs and the moisture in your eyes. But the pony does not flinch. He lowers his head, leaning into the gale with a stubbornness born of the steppes. You reach out to stroke his neck, feeling the grit of the mountain dust already beginning to settle on the fur you cleaned so carefully. It doesn't matter. The cleanliness was a ritual of preparation, a way to ensure his skin was healthy enough to endure this very moment. The grit is merely the signature of the mountain. You realize that the hush-hush of the brush was never about the end result of a shiny coat. It was about the patience required to reach this height. As you reach the top of the pass, the world falls away beneath you. The valley you left this morning is a dark smudge in the distance, and the peaks of the great Altai stretch out like the teeth of a saw. The silence here is absolute, broken only by the snapping of the blue ribbons on a distant ovu. You stop the pony and let him look out over the world. His ears are forward, his nostrils wide, drinking in the thin, cold air. You are suspended between the earth and the heavens, a rider in the 13th century who has found a momentary peace in the heart of the storm. The world has slowed to a standstill, and as you prepare for the descent, you know that the rhythm of the brush is still with you, a steady, silent pulse that makes the impossible feel like home. The descent from the high pass is a masterclass in controlled power. Gravity pulls at you and the pony, urging a speed that the treacherous shale would turn into a disaster. You sit deep in the saddle, your weight shifted back to lighten his forehand, allowing him to use his powerful haunches as brakes. The hush-hush of the morning ritual has transformed into a rhythmic, grinding slide of hooves against loose stone. You can feel the pony's concentration through the reins. It is a physical vibration, a total focus on the placement of every limb. In the year 1200, a single misstep on these slopes doesn't just mean a delay, it means the end of a journey. Yet there is no fear, only the high-altitude clarity that comes from a perfectly maintained partnership. As you reach the lower timberline, the wind loses its predatory edge, replaced by the scent of ancient cedar and damp earth. The shadows of the trees stretch across the path like long dark fingers, welcoming you back to the world of living things. You notice a small spring bubbling up from between two moss-covered boulders, its water clear as liquid diamond. You dismount to let the pony drink, watching the way his throat muscles move in a steady, powerful rhythm. The water is so cold it makes his teeth click, but he drinks deeply, replenishing the moisture lost to the thin mountain air. You take the opportunity to pull the soft brush from your saddlebag, giving his sweat-dampened neck a quick, vigorous rub. The hush-hush sound returns to the forest, a familiar comfort in the wild. The sun is now hanging low, casting a golden amber hue over everything, much like the oil lamp in the stable where this journey began. You realize that the hush you have been chasing is not a destination but a state of mind. It is the patience to wait for the horse to drink, the diligence to check the girth even when you are tired, and the respect to listen to the silence of the woods. The pony lifts his head, water dripping from his muzzle, and looks at you with a calm, steady gaze. There is a profound sense of equality in this look. You have provided the direction, and he has provided the strength. But in the end, you are both just travelers under the same vast turning sky. As the forest deepens and the light begins to fail, you find a sheltered hollow beneath a cluster of towering larches. This will be your camp for the night. There is no fire tonight, for the wind is too unpredictable, but you have the warmth of the pony and the thickness of your furs. You unsaddle him with the same reverence you would use to disarm a king, laying the tack aside with care. You spend a long time grooming him in the twilight, the brush moving by feel rather than sight. The hush-hush is the only language spoken in the dark, a lullaby of care that seals the day. The world has slowed to a standstill once more, and as you curl up against the pony's side, feeling the massive rhythmic beat of his heart, you know that you have found the true meaning of the trail. The Altai is vast, the century is harsh, but the bond is absolute. The deep blue of the mountain night envelops the larch grove, turning the trees into towering sentinels of shadow. You are tucked into the hollow of a massive root system, the pony standing so close that you can feel the heat of his body radiating through your heavy cloak. This is the rawest form of companionship, survival stripped of all artifice. In the year 1200, the darkness is not an absence of light, but a physical presence, a weight that settles over the land. Yet within this small radius of shared warmth, the weight feels light. You reach out a gloved hand and find the pony's leg in the dark, checking the tendons one last time by touch. They are cool and tight, a testament to his incredible conditioning and the care you've bestowed upon him. As the midnight hour passes, a light snow begins to fall, the flakes drifting down through the larch needles like silent feathers. They land on the pony's back, but they do not melt immediately. His thick winter coat, so meticulously groomed, acts as a perfect insulator, keeping his internal heat trapped deep within. You listen to the sound of his breathing, a slow, deep whoosh that seems to synchronize with the swaying of the trees. Every so often he shifts his weight with a soft thud of a hoof on the pine needles, a reminder that even in sleep he is a mountain of living muscle. The hush-hush of the brush from the previous days has become a permanent echo in your mind, a rhythm that's steadying your own heart as the temperature continues to plummet. In this frozen stillness, your thoughts drift back through the miles you have covered. You think of the dust of the valley, the shale of the high pass, and the emerald moss of the hidden springs. Each landscape was a challenge, and each challenge was met with the same quiet determination. You realize that the horse has become a mirror of your own soul. When you are calm and diligent with the brush, he is steady and sure on the trail. The act of grooming was never just about hygiene. It was a daily meditation, a way to forge a singular identity out of two separate beings. In the vastness of the Altai, an individual is easily lost, but a pair, a rider and a horse, is a force that can endure the ages. As the first hint of grey begins to bleed into the eastern sky, you rise from your bed of needles, your joints are stiff, and your breath comes in sharp, crystalline puffs. The pony wakes instantly, his ears swiveling toward you, his eyes catching the faint pre-dawn light. There is no need for words. You pick up the brush from your pack, and despite the freezing air, you begin the ritual once more. The hush-hush returns to the grove, a rhythmic scratching that clears away the night's frost and rouses the pony's spirit. It is the sound of life reclaiming the world from the winter. You are ready to move again, to face whatever the 13th century has written in the snow. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in the quiet of the larches, you find the strength to lead your companion back out into the light. The grey light of morning filters through the larch needles, revealing a world transformed by a thin layer of fresh powder. You move with a quiet efficiency, your hands working the brush across the pony's flanks to clear the dusting of snow that had settled during the night. The hush-hush sound is muted today, dampened by the soft, cold atmosphere of the grove. In the year 1200, every morning is a renewal of the pact made between man and beast. You notice how the pony's muscles ripple under the skin as the friction of the brush brings warmth back to his surface. He leans into your touch, his muzzle blowing a warm cloud of steam against your shoulder, a gesture of recognition that transcends the harshness of the environment. As you tighten the girth of the saddle, the leather gives a familiar, reassuring creak. You feel the pony expand his ribs, a subtle trick of an experienced trail horse, and you wait patiently for him to exhale before securing the buckle. This small moment of understanding is the result of the days spent in close proximity. You are not fighting him, you are moving with him. The forest around you is waking up, the sound of snow sliding off high branches creating soft whoomp noises that echo through the trees. You lead the pony out from the shelter of the larches, his hooves sinking into the fresh snow with a crisp, clean sound. The trail ahead is hidden now, but the pony's instincts are sharp and his trust in your guidance is absolute. The journey continues as the sun struggles to pierce the heavy morning mist. You ride through a world of white and silver, where the only color is the deep dun of the pony's coat and the dark green of the occasional pine. The rhythm of the trail is a steady, hypnotic beat. Each step is a testament to the endurance you have nurtured. You think about the hush of the stable and how it has expanded to encompass the entire mountain range. The external world may be vast and intimidating, but the internal world, the space between the saddle and the horse, is controlled and peaceful. You find yourself humming a low, wordless tune, the vibrations blending with the rhythmic breathing of the animal beneath you. As the mist finally begins to lift, you see a wide, frozen plateau stretching out toward the horizon. It is a lonely, beautiful place where the wind has carved the snow into waves that look like a frozen sea. The pony pauses at the edge of the clearing, his ears flicking as he surveys the open ground. There is a sense of immense freedom here, a feeling of being at the very edge of the known world. You give him a gentle nudge, and he steps out onto the plateau, his pace increasing as the terrain levels out. The hush-hush of the brush is now the swish-swish of legs moving through deep powder. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in this wide, white expanse you and the pony are the only movement, a single point of life in a masterpiece of ice. The crossing of the frozen plateau feels like navigating the surface of a silent, forgotten moon. The light reflects off the ice crystals with a brilliance that forces you to squint, yet the air remains bitingly cold, pulling the moisture from your lips. In the year 1200, such vast open spaces are both a blessing and a curse. There are no hidden ravines to swallow a horse, but there is also no shelter from the relentless Altai wind. The pony maintains a steady, rhythmic trot, his breathing a powerful bellows that keeps time with the strike of his hooves. The hush-hush of the stable has been replaced by the crunch-snap of breaking ice crusts. You feel the immense strength of his haunches as he pushes through drifts that reach his knees, never faltering, never losing his cadence. Midway across the expanse, you pull him to a halt. The silence is so absolute it rings in your ears like a physical tone. You reach down and pat his neck, feeling the damp heat beneath his winter coat. Even in this sub-zero void, the horse is a furnace of life. You reach into your pouch and pull out a handful of dried grain, offering it to him. The sound of him crunching the seeds is the only thing that anchors you to the physical world. You look back at your trail, a single straight line of hoof prints cutting through the pristine white, stretching back until it disappears into the mountain mist. It is a humble mark upon a colossal landscape, yet it represents a journey of profound connection. You aren't just crossing a plateau, you're carrying a shared history across the roof of the world. As you resume the trek, the wind begins to pick up, whistling through the gaps in your headgear. The pony lowers his head, squinting against the blowing drift, his tail streaming out behind him like a banner of dun-colored silk. You lean low over his neck, sharing his profile to minimize the wind's bite. In this moment of extreme exposure, the grooming you did in the valley feels like a lifetime ago, yet its benefits are what keep the pony moving now. His skin is clear of irritants, his muscles are supple from the massage of the brush, and his spirit is calm because he knows your touch. You are a single unit of survival, a warm-blooded defiance against the freezing sky. The plateau seems endless, but the rhythm of his movement provides a sense of inevitable progress. As the sun begins to dip, casting long violet shadows across the frozen waves of snow, you see the far edge of the plateau where the mountain begins to descend again. There, nestled in the lee of a granite ridge, is a small stone hut, a chosh built by hunters or shepherds decades ago. It is a modest goal, but to you and the pony it is a palace. You urge him forward, and he responds with a final surge of energy, his hooves drumming a celebratory beat on the hardening ground. The world has slowed to a standstill in the fading light, and as you reach the shelter of the stones, the hush returns. You dismount, your legs trembling slightly, and look into the pony's eyes. They are clear, tired, but filled with an ancient, steadfast light. You have crossed the plateau, and the rhythm of the brush awaits. The stone hut offers a heavy, thick silence that smells of ancient soot and cold minerals. As you lead the pony inside, the transition from the screaming wind of the plateau to this static air feels like a physical embrace. There is barely enough room for the two of you, but the closeness is an advantage. The pony's massive frame begins to act as a radiator, warming the cramped stone interior within minutes. In the year 1200, such a shelter is the difference between a restful night and a desperate struggle for breath. You immediately set to work, your hands moving with a frantic grace to strip the saddle and felt pads from his steaming back. The hush-hush of the dry cloth you use to rub him down is loud in the small space, a rhythmic friction that chases the chill from his damp skin. You notice a small pile of old, dry heather in the corner, likely left by a traveller whose name has been forgotten by time. You spread it out for the pony, watching as he immediately begins to sift through it with his sensitive lips. This small comfort, combined with the lack of wind, brings a visible change to his posture. His ears, which had been pinned back against the gale, now swivel forward, relaxed and curious. You take your brush and begin a deep, slow grooming session. This is more than maintenance now, it is a celebration of the plateau crossing. Each stroke of the bristles over his powerful shoulders is a thank you written in touch. The sound of the brush against his coat, that familiar grounding hush, creates a sanctuary within the stone walls. The darkness outside the hut's narrow doorway is total, save for the brilliant icy stars that seem close enough to touch. You sit on your upturned saddle, leaning your back against the pony's warm flank. You can feel the vibration of his chewing through your spine, a steady, rhythmic pulse that lulls you into a state of deep reflection. The journey has stripped away everything unnecessary. You are no longer concerned with the politics of the Great Khan or the movements of the southern silk traders. You are only concerned with the texture of the horse's fur, the soundness of his hooves, and the shared warmth of this stone box. The hush-hush has become the mantra of your existence, a reminder that peace is found in the smallest of duties. As the night deepens, the temperature outside drops to a level that would shatter wood, but inside, the air remains thick and survivable. You reach out in the dark, your fingers finding the soft skin of the pony's muzzle. He blows a gentle puff of air into your palm, a greeting between equals. The world has slowed to a standstill, frozen in a moment of absolute stillness. You realize that the Altai has not conquered you, rather it has invited you into its quietest, most sacred depths. You close your eyes, the rhythm of the pony's breathing serving as your only clock. Tomorrow will bring the descent into the lower valleys. But tonight, the hush of the stone hut is the only world you need. The bond is complete, the shelter is solid, and the 13th century sleeps beside you. The first light of the new day does not come as a sunrise, but as a gradual thinning of the shadows within the stone hut. You wake to the sound of the pony's soft nickering, a low vibration that resonates through the floor and into your bones. Outside the world is a monochromatic study in silver and blue, the plateau still locked in a frozen grip. You rise and immediately reach for the brush, your hands cold but eager to begin the morning ritual. The hush-hush of the bristles clearing away the overnight dust, and the faint scent of the dry heather is the first sign of life in the silent hut. In the year 1200, this is how a traveller reclaims their humanity through the steady, selfless care of another living soul. As you groom him, you notice the way the light catches the sheen of his coat, a deep luster that you have cultivated through every mile of this journey. The pony stands perfectly still, his head lowered in a state of relaxed focus. You spend extra time on his legs today, checking the fetlocks and rubbing the muscles that carried the weight of the wind on the plateau. This is the final preparation for the descent into the green valleys that lie somewhere below the clouds. The hush of the brush is a bridge between the high, frozen desert of the peaks and the lush life of the lower elevations. You feel a sense of profound readiness in the horse. He is not just a tool for transportation, but a co-conspirator in this survival. The process of saddling is quick now, your movements synchronized with the pony's breathing. You lead him out of the stone hut, and the crisp air of the morning hits you like a physical force. The path leading away from the ridge is steep and narrow, carved into the side of a granite cliff. You mount him, and as he takes the first step onto the descent, you feel the shift in his energy. He is eager for the lower lands, for the smell of damp pine and the sound of running water. The rhythm of the descent is different from the climb. It is a cautious braking movement, a series of calculated leans and bracing steps. The hush-hush of the brush is gone, replaced by the skitter-clack of hooves on loose shale. But the spirit of the ritual remains. By midday, the environment begins to soften. The first stunted shrubs appear, their branches heavy with frost that soon melts into glistening droplets as the sun gains strength. You can feel the air becoming thicker, richer with the scent of life. The pony's gait becomes more fluid, his ears flicking forward as he hears the distant muffled roar of a mountain river. You realize that you have passed the harshest test of the Altai. The bond that was forged in the stable and tempered on the plateau has brought you through the impossible. The world has slowed to a standstill, and in the golden light of the descending trail, you understand that the hush was never about the silence of the mountain, but about the quiet strength you found within the connection to your horse. The journey continues, but the fear is gone, replaced by a deep, enduring peace. The transition from the high, desolate ridges to the upper reaches of the forest is marked by a change in the very texture of the air. It grows heavy with the perfume of resin and the dampness of melting snow. As the pony picks his way down the winding trail, you notice the rhythmic hush-hush of his breathing taking on a lighter, more rhythmic quality. The tension of the high-altitude crossing has bled away, leaving behind a focused, supple strength. In the year 1200, the forest is both a pantry and a fortress, and as you descend into the shadows of the ancient pines, you feel the protection of the canopy closing over you. The pony's hooves now strike the earth with a muffled thud against the thick carpet of needles, a softer sound that brings a sense of profound relief to your ears. You reach a small clearing where a mountain stream, liberated from its icy prison, tumbles over smooth grey stones. You dismount and lead the pony to the water's edge. He doesn't rush. He stands for a moment, ears twitching toward the song of the water before dipping his muzzle into the cold current. As he drinks, you pull the grooming brush from your pack. Even here, in the lushness of the descent, the ritual does not break. You begin to brush the dried sweat and plateau dust from his haunches, the hush-hush of the bristles blending with the bubbling of the brook. You are cleaning away the remnants of the high peaks, preparing him for the softer world below. The horse's coat begins to reclaim its deep, polished glow, reflecting the dappled sunlight that filters through the branches. The afternoon sun casts long, amber rays across the forest floor, turning the moss into patches of glowing velvet. You spend a long time by the stream, checking each of the pony's hooves and ensuring no sharp shale from the pass remains lodged in his frogs. This attention to detail is the language of your friendship. You speak to him in the pressure of your hands and the steady rhythm of your movements, and he speaks back in the relaxed tilt of his head and the gentle flick of his tail. In this hidden corner of the Altai, the weight of centuries feels non-existent. There is only the present moment, the cool water, the warm horse, and the steady grounding work of the brush. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for the stamina of this animal. He has carried you through a void of ice and returned you to the land of the living. As evening begins to draw its violet curtain over the woods, you find a flat shelf of land sheltered by a ring of silver birches. This will be your camp. You unsaddle the pony, the leather feeling supple and broken in, a part of your own body now. You don't need a stone hut tonight. The air is kind, and the trees provide a natural roof. After a final, thorough grooming that leaves the pony's coat as smooth as silk, you lean against a birch trunk and watch him graze on the sweet, high-altitude grass. The world has slowed to a standstill, and the hush of the forest is a lullaby. You have descended from the roof of the world, but the bond you carried across the heights remains the most precious thing you own. Tomorrow, the valley floor awaits, but tonight, the peace of the woods is enough. The night beneath the silver birches is a symphony of soft rustles and the distant melodic chime of the stream. You lie in the cradle of the forest, the air no longer a knife against your skin, but a cool, refreshing silk. The pony is a dark, comforting presence just a few feet away, his silhouette blending with the vertical lines of the trees. In the year 1200, the forest at night is a place of deep magic and hidden life, yet you feel no trepidation. The hush-hush of your brush from earlier that evening has left a lingering sense of order in the wild. You can hear the pony's rhythmic cropping of the grass, a sound of life sustaining itself, steady and sure. This sound is your anchor, a tether to the physical world that prevents your mind from drifting too far into the vast, starry overhead. As the pre-dawn light begins to wash the silver bark of the trees into a ghostly white, you rise without the bone-deep ache that plagued you on the plateau. The lower altitude has brought oxygen back to your blood and a renewed vigor to your companion. You approach the pony, who greets you with a low, vibrating nicker that seems to originate from deep within his chest. The morning ritual begins in the soft blue light. The hush-hush of the brush is the first purposeful sound of the day, a rhythmic waking of the horse's skin and spirit. You find that the dust of the high passes has finally been banished, replaced by the natural oils of his coat which now shine even in the dimness. You are polishing a living jewel, a creature that has been tempered by the most brutal elements of the Altai and emerged stronger for it. Today's trail follows the contours of the river, descending into a wide, verdant valley, where the first signs of human habitation begin to appear. A distant plume of smoke from a winter yurt, the faint scent of roasting mutton on the wind. The pony senses the change. His step is light, almost dancing over the roots and soft earth. You ride with a loose rein, trusting him to navigate the gentle slopes. The hush of the forest is gradually joined by the sounds of the world, the call of a marmot, the rush of the larger river below, and the creak of your own leather gear. You realize that the isolation of the high peaks was a forge, and the bond you created there is now a permanent part of your identity. You are the rider who survived the heights, and he is the mount that made it possible. By the time the sun is overhead, you reach the valley floor. The grass here is thick and gold, waving in a breeze that carries the warmth of the southern steppes. You stop at a wide bend in the river to let the pony rest before the final leg of the journey. As he stands in the shallows, the water swirling around his powerful legs, you take the brush one last time. The hush-hush is a quiet song of completion. You have brought him from the stable to the summit and down to the sanctuary of the valley. The world has slowed to a standstill, the golden light of the 13th century bathing everything in a timeless glow. You look at the mountains behind you, jagged, white and distant, and then at the pony before you. The rhythm of the brush remains, a heartbeat of care in a world that never stops moving, a silent promise that wherever the trail leads next, you will go together. The valley floor expands before you like a golden tapestry woven from the very light of the Altai sun. As the pony steps off the last rocky incline and onto the soft, loamy soil of the plains, his entire posture changes. The wary, high-stepping gait of the mountain heights softens into a long, fluid stride that eats up the distance with deceptive ease. In the year 1200, reaching the flatlands after the vertical trials of the peaks is like coming home to a forgotten dream. You can feel the warmth of the earth rising to meet you, a stark contrast to the cold, indifferent stone of the plateau. The hush-hush of your morning grooming remains the silent cadence of your thoughts, a rhythmic reminder that the horse beneath you is not just a beast of burden, but a partner whose health is your own. As you ride toward the distant clusters of white gers, the air becomes thick with the smells of the steppe, wild chives, crushed grass, and the faint, sweet tang of mare's milk fermenting in the sun. The pony's nostrils flare, drinking in these familiar scents. He lets out a long, loud whinny that echoes across the open space, a triumphant announcement of your arrival. You reach down and squeeze his neck, feeling the sheer density of the muscle you've kept supple through hours of patient work. The dust of the high passes is gone now, replaced by a coat that catches the sun like a shield of burnished copper. You realize that the beauty of the horse is not for show. It is the outward sign of an internal resilience that was forged in the hush of the stable and tested in the howling winds of the summit. A group of riders appears on the horizon, their horses moving like small dark dots against the vast gold of the grass. As they draw closer, you see they are local herders, their faces weathered into maps of brown leather and deep-set eyes. They pull up beside you, their own mounts huffing and tossing their heads. They look at your pony, at the clarity of his eyes, the soundness of his hooves, and the remarkable sheen of his coat after such a journey. One of the elders nods slowly, a gesture of profound respect in this century of few words. He recognizes the work you have put in. He knows that a horse in this condition after crossing the Altai is a testament to a rider who understands the sacred duty of care. The hush-hush of your brush has spoken for you, telling a story of diligence that these men of the steppe understand better than anyone. As evening approaches, you find a spot near a slow-moving tributary of the main river. The grass here is belly-high and lush, a reward for the pony's long-suffering loyalty. You unsaddle him for the final time of this trek. Feeling the cool evening air touch his back, you don't just walk away, you take the brush and begin a slow, thorough cleaning, removing the salt of the valley's heat. The hush-hush sound is a peaceful punctuation to the day's end. The world has slowed to a standstill, the sky turning a deep, bruised crimson as the sun touches the edge of the earth. You are a traveller in the 13th century, sitting in the heart of the great wild, and as the pony lowers his head to graze in the twilight, you know that the rhythm of the brush is the only anchor you will ever need in a world of endless horizons. The twilight deepened over the tributary, turning the golden grass into a sea of silver grey. The pony stood knee-deep in the lush forage, his silhouette a solid, comforting anchor against the vast, open horizon of the steppe. In the year 1200, the transition from the vertical world of the Altai to the horizontal infinity of the plains brings a different kind of silence, one that doesn't press against your ears, but breathes with the land. You sat by your saddle, the leather still warm from the day's ride, and watched the first stars begin to pulse in the darkening vault of the sky. The hush-hush of your earlier grooming session seemed to linger in the air, a phantom rhythm that settled your spirit. You felt the profound weight of the distance you had covered, not in miles, but in the deepened understanding between yourself and the animal who had carried your life upon his back. As the night air grew crisp, you reached out to touch the pony's flank, feeling the slow, rhythmic expansion of his barrel as he breathed. He stopped grazing for a moment, turning his head to nudge your shoulder with a soft, velvety muzzle. It was a gesture of quiet kinship, a recognition of the shared trials of the high passes and the frozen plateau. You realized that the ritual of the brush had been a bridge across time itself. In this century, where survival is a daily negotiation with the elements, the simple act of maintaining a horse's well-being is an act of defiance against the chaos of the world. The sheen on his coat, the strength in his stride, and the trust in his eyes were the only currency that truly mattered. You were no longer just a traveller passing through. You were a part of the living pulse of the Altai. In the quiet hours before dawn, a low mist began to crawl across the riverbank, obscuring the ground and leaving you and the pony suspended in a world of white vapour. You rose and began the morning ritual by feel, the brush finding its way across his familiar contours in the dim light. The hush-hush sound was intimate, a private conversation between the two of you before the rest of the world woke up. You cleared the night's dampness from his fur, feeling the warmth of his blood rising to meet your hand. This was the true beginning of every journey, the moment where the rider ensures the mount is ready for the unknown. Even here, on the safe floors of the valley, the discipline remained. A horse cared for in the light of the valley is a horse that will save you in the darkness of the mountain. As the sun finally broke over the eastern rim, burning away the mist in long golden streaks, you stood back to look at him. He stood proud and refreshed, his coat shimmering like liquid bronze in the new light. The journey across the peaks had not broken him. It had tempered him into something magnificent. You felt a surge of quiet pride, not for your own endurance, but for the resilience of the bond you had polished with every stroke of the brush. The world had slowed to a standstill, a perfect moment of clarity where the path behind was honored and the path ahead was welcomed. You reached for the reins, the leather supple and strong, and as you prepared to mount, You knew that the hush of the stable followed you still, a steady guiding beat in the heart of the 13th century. The morning sun over the steppe is a different creature than the one that haunts the peaks. It is generous and wide, spreading a golden warmth that sinks into the pony's coat and your own tired muscles. You prepare to leave the riverbank, the transition from rest to movement marked by the familiar tightening of the cinch. In the year 1200, the open plains offer a deceptive sense of ease, but you know the distance is its own kind of challenge. You mount with a light heart, feeling the pony's eagerness in the way he tosses his head and stamps an impatient hoof into the soft earth. The hush-hush of the morning brush has left him energized, his skin free of the grit that causes saddle sores, allowing him to move with a range of motion that is pure, unadulterated power. As you ride deeper into the heart of the valley, you pass through seas of tall, silver-tipped grass that whisper against the pony's chest. The sound is a natural extension of the hush you have carried with you from the very first stable. You are moving through a landscape that feels eternal, where the horizon is a distant promise and the sky is an ocean of deep, impossible blue. Every few miles you lean forward to pat the pony's neck, feeling the rhythmic play of his muscles. This is the reward for the cold nights on the ridges, the ability to gallop across the open earth with nothing but the wind for company. You let him out into a steady canter, and the world becomes a blur of gold and green, the drum thump of his hooves sounding a triumphant beat across the ancient soil. By midday, you encounter a caravan of traders heading toward the western passes you just conquered. They stop their heavy ox-drawn carts to let you pass, their eyes widening at the sight of a lone rider coming from the high Altai. They see a pony that looks as though he has just stepped out of a royal stable rather than off a frozen plateau. One merchant offers a skin of fermented milk, and as you drink you see him reach out to touch the pony's shoulder. His fingers slide over the smooth, clean fur, and he mumbles a prayer of luck. In this age, a well-kept horse is a sign of a disciplined soul. The hush-hush of your daily care has become your silent reputation, a mark of quality that transcends language and borders. You share a moment of mutual respect before parting ways, the dust of their wheels settling behind you. As the sun begins its long, slow descent toward the tail of the world, you find a small grove of wild almond trees near a natural spring. The air is sweet with the scent of ripening nuts and cool water. You dismount, your movements fluid and practiced. Before you even think of your own meal, you reach for the brush. The hush-hush returns, a rhythmic scratching that lulls the pony into a state of peaceful recovery. The world has slowed to a standstill, the shadows of the almond trees stretching long and thin across the grass. You are a ghost of the 13th century, a wanderer who has found the secret to the trail, that the journey is not about the destination, but about the care you give to the one who carries you there. The rhythm of the brush is your heartbeat, and the vast Altai is your home. The evening air within the almond grove is thick and golden, like honey being poured over the world. As you work the brush along the pony's spine, the hush-hush sound is a soft friction that matches the gentle rustle of the leaves above. In the year 1200, such moments of tranquility are rare and should be savored like a precious metal. You notice how the pony's breathing has slowed into a deep, rhythmic sigh, his eyes half closed in a state of absolute contentment. The journey has changed him as it has changed you. The skittish energy of the lowlands has been replaced by a grounded, iron-willed composure. You realize that by tending to his coat and his hooves every single day, you are also tending to the fraying edges of your own spirit. The brush is a tool for the horse, but the rhythm is a balm for the rider. As the sun dips below the horizon, the sky transforms into a bruised purple, and the first cool breeze of the night stirs the grass. You finish the grooming with a soft cloth, wiping away the last of the steppe dust from the pony's nostrils and eyes. He stands as a monument of health, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. You take a moment to lean your forehead against his damp neck, inhaling the scent of horse, dried grass, and clean earth. It is the smell of survival in this vast nomadic world where empires rise and fall with the changing of the seasons. This small shared space of trust is the only thing that feels permanent. You have learned that the hush of the stable was never a destination you left behind, but a sanctuary you carried within you, stroke by stroke, across the highest peaks of the world. The fire you build is small, a mere flicker against the encroaching dark, used only to boil a bit of tea. The pony stays close, his presence a living wall that breaks the wind. You look at your hands, calloused and stained by the mountain and the trail, and you see the hands of someone who has mastered the art of the long road. You think of the miles yet to come, the wide deserts, the rushing rivers, and the distant cities of the south. They no longer seem daunting. The hush-hush of the brush has taught you that any distance can be conquered if you move in harmony with the life beneath you. You are a navigator of the 13th century, steered not by stars alone but by the steady, warm pulse of your companion. The world has slowed to a standstill as the stars take their places in the infinite black. The almond grove is a silent cathedral, and the pony is its guardian. You pull your furs around you, feeling the radiated heat of the horse as he settles onto the grass nearby. There is no more fear of the high passes or the lonely plateaus. The rhythm of the brush has become a part of the wind, a part of the grass, and a part of your soul. As you drift into a deep, restful sleep, the last thing you hear is the soft, rhythmic crunch of the pony grazing in the dark, a sound that promises that tomorrow the ritual will begin again, and the trail will continue as constant as the turning sky. The dawn breaks over the almond grove with a soft, pearlescent glow, the light filtering through the thin leaves to paint dappled patterns upon the pony's sleeping form. You wake before the birds, your internal clock set to the rising of the sun and the needs of the beast. In the year 1200, the morning does not wait for the weary. You rise, your movements quiet so as not to startle the stillness of the trees, and find the pony already watching you, his ears flicking back and forth as he monitors the awakening forest. The brush feels familiar in your hand, its wood worn smooth by the sweat of your palms and the countless miles of the Altai. As you begin the hush-hush of the morning ritual, a light frost on his coat turns to mist beneath the warmth of your strokes, rising like wood smoke into the cool air. This morning, the grooming is deeper, more investigative. You are checking for the subtle signs of fatigue that the excitement of the valley floor might have masked. You run your hands down each leg, feeling for heat in the joints, or any tightness in the tendons that might suggest the long canter of the previous day took its toll. But there is nothing but iron and silk. The pony is in the prime of his life, his body a testament to the thousands of brushstrokes that have kept his blood flowing and his skin healthy. The hush of the bristles becomes a song of vitality, a rhythmic confirmation that you are both ready to face the horizon once more. You spend a moment extra on his forelock, combing through the thick hair until it lies flat against his broad, intelligent forehead, his eyes remaining calm and steady as they hold your gaze. As you saddle him, you notice the landscape beyond the grove shifting. The lush grass of the valley is beginning to give way to a more rugged terrain of red clay and scattered boulders, the gateway to the southern reaches. The air is drier here, carrying the faint metallic scent of sun-baked stone. You mount, feeling the familiar shift of his weight as he prepares to move. The rhythm of the trail returns, a steady and purposeful walk that eats the distance. The hush-hush of the brush is now an internal beat, a mental pacing that keeps you focused as the heat of the day begins to climb. You realize that the Altai was not just a physical barrier but a spiritual transition. You left the mountains a traveler, but you moved through the plains as a part of the horse himself. By high noon, the shade of the almond trees is a distant memory, and the sun beats down with a fierce, uncompromising intensity. You find a small outcrop of rock that offers a sliver of shadow and pull the pony to a halt. As he rests, you take a damp cloth and wipe the salt from around his eyes and the corners of his mouth. This small act of mercy is the true core of your journey. In the 13th century, where life is often cheap and the road is long, these small moments of care are what preserve the soul. The pony leans into the coolness of the cloth, a long sigh escaping his nostrils. The world has slowed to a standstill in the shimmering heat haze, and in this quiet pocket of shadow, the hush of the ritual remains the only truth you know. You are bound together by more than leather and rope. You are bound by 1,000 mornings of the brush and 1,000 nights of shared breath. The red clay of the southern gateway crumbles beneath the pony's hooves, sending small puffs of terracotta dust into the shimmering air. As you leave the last of the shade behind, the vastness of the steppe opens up once more, but it is a harsher, more demanding landscape than the lush valley you departed. In the year 1200, the heat is as much a predator as the wolves of the high peaks, seeking to sap the moisture from your skin and the spirit from your mount. You keep a steady, conservative pace, your eyes scanning the horizon for the telltale shimmer of water or the dark smudge of a distant scrub. The hush-hush of the brush from this morning is still a fresh memory, a layer of protection you applied to his skin to ensure the dust and sweat would not turn into a grinding paste beneath the leather of the saddle. You feel the pony's endurance as a physical presence between your knees. He does not fight the heat. He endures it, his breathing deep and regulated, a rhythmic huff-pause-huff that mirrors the steady beating of a drum. To an outsider, he might look like a simple beast of burden, but to you, he is a masterpiece of maintenance. You think of the hours spent in the hush of the stable and the quiet corners of the trail, realizing that every minute of grooming was an investment in this very afternoon. Because his coat is clean and his muscles are supple, he does not overheat as quickly as a neglected animal would. Your care has given him an edge over the environment, a silent advantage that allows you to push forward while others might be forced to falter and wait for the cool of the night. Late in the afternoon, you find a shallow depression in the earth where a subterranean spring has allowed a patch of hardy, deep-rooted shrubs to survive. It is not much, but it is enough to break the monotony of the red clay. You dismount and immediately lead the pony to the center of the patch, where the earth feels slightly cooler beneath your boots. You do not unsaddle him yet. The heat is too intense to expose his back to the sudden shock of the air, but you loosen the girth and lift the flaps of the saddle to let the skin breathe. You take the brush and begin a light, brisk cleaning of his neck and chest. The hush-hush sound is sharp and dry in the arid air, a rhythmic scraping that clears away the salt crystals forming in his fur. The pony lowers his head, his ears flopping to the sides in a gesture of profound relaxation. As the sun begins to lose its predatory edge, turning from a white-hot disk to a deep, angry orange, the temperature drops with the suddenness characteristic of the high plains. You finally strip the tack away, the pony giving a vigorous shake that sends a cloud of red dust into the sunset. You spend a long time on the grooming tonight, the hush-hush of the bristles serving as a meditative end to a grueling day. The world has slowed to a standstill, the sky bleeding into shades of violet and gold that match the shifting colors of the clay. You are a solitary figure in the 13th century, a man and his horse carved out of the silence of the earth. As you settle down for the night, the pony standing guard over your sleep, you know that the rhythm of the brush is the thread that keeps your world from unraveling. The night upon the red clay plains is a cold, star-drenched mirror to the heat of the day. The ground, which had been baking under a relentless sun, now radiates a faint, dying warmth that the pony seeks out by standing perfectly still over the softest patch of earth. In the year 1200, the silence of the southern steppe is different from the Altai. It is a dry silence, smelling of ancient minerals and parched scrub. You lie close to his forelegs, wrapped in your heavy woolens, listening to the rhythmic grinding of his teeth as he works through a small bundle of dry forage. The hush-hush of your evening ritual still echoes in your mind, a comforting ghost of a sound that reassures you of his readiness for the miles ahead. You have learned that in this desolate landscape, the horse is not just your transport, but your life support system, and his health is the only wealth you truly possess. As the pre-dawn light bleeds a pale, sickly yellow across the eastern horizon, you rise to the sound of the wind whistling through the rocky outcrops. The air is bitingly cold, a sharp reminder of the extremes this land demands. You reach for the brush, your fingers stiff but determined. The pony greets you with a low, vibrating huff, his breath forming a brief cloud in the freezing air. The hush-hush of the morning grooming begins, a rhythmic friction that generates a small amount of heat between the bristles and his hide. You clear away the red dust that settled in his coat overnight, noticing how the deep dun color of his fur seems to absorb the first rays of the sun. This ritual is the anchor of your morning, a steadying force that prepares your mind as much as his body for the transition from the stillness of camp to the motion of the trail. Today, the terrain becomes more broken, carved by ancient dry watercourses that snake through the red earth. Each descent into a gully and each climb up the opposite bank requires a surge of power from the pony's haunches. You feel the strength you have nurtured through the long weeks of grooming and careful riding. There is no hesitation in his step, only a calculated, fluid economy of movement. The hush of the brush is replaced by the scuff slide of hooves on loose clay and the occasional clink of a stone being turned. You realize that the bond between you has moved beyond the need for commands. You shift your weight and he adjusts his center of gravity before you even realize you've moved. You are a single organism navigating a fractured world, a testament to the thousands of quiet moments spent in each other's company. By midday, the red clay gives way to a vast expanse of white salt flats, shimmering like a mirage under the high sun. The glare is blinding, and the air is thick with the scent of brine. You stop to protect the pony's eyes and nostrils, using a piece of soft silk to wipe away the irritating salt crystals that bloom on his skin. This is the hush in action, the constant vigilant care that prevents a small discomfort from becoming a debilitating injury. The world has slowed to a standstill in the white heat. The only sound the rhythmic crunch-crunch of salt crust underfoot. You lead him by the rein, walking to spare him your weight in the most punishing part of the day. As you walk side by side, his head level with your shoulder, you feel a profound sense of shared purpose. The 13th century is a vast, unforgiving theatre, but within the circle of your partnership, there is a steady, unshakable peace. The salt flats stretch toward the horizon like a sea of frozen white fire, reflecting the sun with a ferocity that turns the world into a bleached void. Every step the pony takes sends a sharp, rhythmic crackle through the air, a sound that replaces the soft thud of the valley grass. In the year 1200, these flats are a test of spirit. The brine stings any small nick on the skin, and the lack of landmarks can drive a man to madness. You maintain your focus by watching the rhythmic sway of the pony's shoulders, a movement you have come to know as intimately as your own heartbeat. The hush-hush of the brush from this morning is the memory that keeps you grounded, a reminder of the physical reality of flesh and fur in a landscape that feels like a fever dream. You stop every hour to sponge his legs with a precious bit of fresh water, washing away the caustic white crust before it can irritate his skin. As the sun reaches its zenith, the heat becomes a physical weight, pressing down on the white expanse until the air itself seems to shimmer and warp. You find a lone skeletal tree, a tamarisk that has somehow survived on the edge of the salt, and pull the pony into its thin, feathered shadow. He is breathing hard, his flanks heaving with a steady, powerful rhythm. You do not let him stand idle. You take the softest brush from your pack and begin a slow, cooling stroke along his neck and under his belly. The hush-hush is a whisper here, a quiet intervention that helps his circulation and keeps his mind calm in the oppressive heat. You talk to him in a low murmur, the words less important than the tone, a steady stream of sound that anchors both of you to the shade. He leans his heavy head against your chest, his eyes closing as he finds a moment of respite in the middle of the white furnace. The journey across the salt takes the better part of the day, and by the time the sun begins to sink, the white world turns to a brilliant, bruised violet. The salt crystals catch the low light, sparkling like a field of fallen stars. You finally reach the far edge where the red clay returns, and the pony lets out a long, shuddering breath, his hooves welcoming the return of solid earth. You lead him a little further until you find a sheltered hollow between two low ridges. The temperature begins its rapid descent, the heat of the day vanishing into the thin atmosphere. You strip away the saddle, and despite your own exhaustion, you begin the most thorough grooming of the entire journey. You must ensure every single grain of salt is removed from his coat, for if it remains it will itch and burn through the night. The hush-hush of the brush is vigorous and determined, a rhythmic cleansing that restores the deep, healthy glow to his dun-colored hide. Night falls with a sudden icy finality, the stars appearing with a clarity that only the high desert can provide. You build no fire, for there is no wood, but you and the pony huddle together in the hollow, your bodies sharing a singular heat. The hush of the desert is absolute, a silence so deep you can hear the blood rushing in your ears. You reach out in the dark and find the pony's ear, scratching the soft spot at the base just the way he likes. He responds with a gentle nudge, a silent acknowledgement of the day's shared hardship. The world has slowed to a standstill, the 13th century a distant whisper beyond the ridges. You are just two living things in a vast cold expanse, held together by the memory of the hush-hush and the promise of the morning sun. You fall asleep to the sound of his steady, slow breathing, the most beautiful music in the world. The dawn on the edge of the salt flats arrives with a pale, ghostly light that turns the red clay into a landscape of deep, bruised crimson. You wake to the sensation of the pony's warm breath against your neck, a silent alarm that tells you the world is turning once more. In the year 1200, the morning after a crossing of the White Flats is a critical time. The salt is a thief of moisture and a bringer of fatigue. You rise, your joints stiff from the cold hollow, and immediately reach for the grooming kit. The hush-hush of the brush is the first rhythm of the new day, a necessary friction that stimulates the skin and shakes off the lethargy of the desert night. You are meticulous, searching for any hidden patches of salt crust in the folds of his skin, your hands moving with the practiced grace of a man who knows that his life depends on the condition of his beast. As you work the bristles over his powerful shoulders, the pony stretches his neck, leaning into the pressure with a low, appreciative groan. The sound of the brush, that steady, grounding hush, acts as a bridge between the exhaustion of yesterday and the requirements of today. You notice how the deep, burnished copper of his coat is beginning to return, the salt dullness fading under the persistence of your hand. This is the art of the long trail, the understanding that restoration is a gradual process of touch and attention. In this era of conquest and chaos, your quiet devotion to the pony's well-being is a private sanctuary. You're not just cleaning a horse, you are reaffirming a pact of mutual survival that was forged in the high Altai and tempered in the white fire of the flats. The trail today leads away from the flats and into a series of narrow, winding canyons where the walls are striped with layers of ochre, iron, and lime. The air here is cooler, trapped between the towering stone faces, and carries the faint metallic tang of groundwater. The pony's hooves ring out with a sharp, echoing clink-clack against the stone floor, a lively sound that signals his returning strength. You ride with a light hand, letting him choose his footing through the debris of ancient flash floods. The hush of the brush is gone, but the internal cadence of the grooming session stays with you, keeping your spirit as steady as the pony's gait. You feel the immense physical presence of the animal beneath you, the rhythmic play of his muscles, the heat of his body, and the focused intelligence of his ears as they pivot to catch the echoes of the canyon. By late afternoon, the canyon opens into a small hidden basin where a trickle of water feeds a cluster of hardy willow trees. It is an oasis of green in a world of red and white. You dismount and allow the pony to drink his fill, his muzzle creating small concentric ripples in the clear pool. As the shadows of the canyon walls stretch across the basin, you settle in for the evening ritual. The hush-hush of the brush returns, a rhythmic accompaniment to the soft sighing of the wind through the willow leaves. The world has slowed to a standstill, the golden light of the 13th century pooling in the basin like liquid amber. You realize that no matter how harsh the terrain or how long the road, the hush is the constant that brings you back to yourself. You are the rider, he is the mount, and together you are the masters of the silence. The evening in the hidden basin feels like a soft pause in the pulse of history. The willow trees, their thin leaves whispering like old silk, provide a canopy of jade against the darkening ochre walls of the canyon. In the year 1200, such a place is more than a campsite. It is a mercy. You spend a long time by the water, the pony standing knee-deep in the cool silt, his tail swishing lazily at the small persistent gnats of the oasis. You pull the brush across his wet flanks, the hush-hush sound turning into a rhythmic shhh-shhh as the water is swept from his coat. The grime of the salt flats and the red dust of the canyons are washed away, leaving him as clean and vibrant as the day you first met in the valley stable. You feel a profound sense of accomplishment in the way he carries his head, not with the drooping neck of a beaten animal, but with the alert, noble posture of a creature who knows he is well loved. As the stars begin to peer over the jagged rim of the canyon, you sit on a flat stone and begin to oil the leather of the saddle and bridle. The smell of the fat and resin mixes with the scent of damp earth and horse. This too is part of the hush, the quiet maintenance of the gear that binds you to the beast. In the 13th century, a snapped cinch or a cracked bit can be a death sentence, so you treat the leather with the same reverence you give the pony's skin. Across the small fire, the pony watches you, his eyes reflecting the flickering orange flames like two dark, polished gemstones. The world has slowed to a standstill, the vast wars of the steppe feeling like rumors from another world. Here, in the hollow of the earth, there is only the rhythmic work of your hands and the steady, grounding presence of your companion. The night is deep and filled with the music of the oasis, the trickle of the spring, the rustle of the willows, and the occasional, contented snort of the horse. You sleep with your head resting on the saddle, your hand resting near the pony's leg. In the stillness, you realize that the hush-hush of the brush has become a language of its own, a way of communicating strength, gratitude, and survival without the need for a single spoken word. You have traversed the ice, the salt, and the stone, and yet the most important journey has been the one that happened in the inches between your hand and his hide. The bond is no longer a thing of utility, it is a living, breathing entity that sustains you both. As the first light of dawn touches the very tips of the canyon walls, turning the high rocks into glowing embers, you rise to begin the cycle anew. The air in the basin is cool and sweet, a final gift before you return to the dry heat of the southern plains. You reach for the brush, and the hush-hush resumes, a rhythmic heartbeat that signals the start of another day. You are ready for whatever lies beyond the canyon's mouth, for you carry with you the discipline of the stable and the resilience of the mountain. The 13th century is a long and winding road, but as you lead the pony toward the narrow exit, his hooves drumming a steady beat on the canyon floor, you know that the hush will always guide you home. The transition from the hidden basin back into the open expanse of the southern plains is like stepping out of a dream and into a furnace. As the canyon walls fall away, the horizon rushes toward you, shimmering with a heat that distorts the very shape of the earth. In the year 1200, the southern steppe is a world of hard edges and relentless light, where the grass grows in sparse, tough clumps of yellow. You feel the pony's muscles bunch beneath you as he adjusts to the shifting footing of sand and sun-baked earth. The hush-hush of the morning brush remains a cool memory on his skin, a layer of cleanliness that allows him to sweat efficiently, his body regulating its temperature with the precision of a fine-tuned engine. You ride into the glare, your eyes squinted against the brilliance, trusting the rhythmic sway of his gait to lead the way. As the day progresses, the air turns dry enough to crack leather and parch the throat. You become hyper-aware of the pony's every movement, watching for the slightest stumble or the heavy hang of his head that might signal exhaustion. But the grooming, the watering, and the careful pacing have paid their dividends. He moves with a steady, tireless energy, his hooves kicking up small plumes of pale dust that settle on your boots. The hush of the brush is absent in the wind, replaced by the whir of cicadas in the dry scrub and the steady thud-thud of the trail. You realize that the discipline of the ritual has become a form of meditation for you. Even in the most punishing heat, your mind returns to the rhythm of the bristles against the grain of his coat, a thought that keeps your own spirit from fraying under the sun. By late afternoon, you spot a line of low, weathered hills that promise a break in the monotony of the flatlands. Between the folds of these hills, you find a small dry wash where a few gnarled bushes offer a meager patch of shade. You dismount, your own legs feeling heavy and drained, but your first thought is for the horse. You lead him into the shadow and begin the ritual of the rest stop. You take a piece of cloth dampened with your remaining water and wipe the white salt from his eyes and the corners of his mouth. The pony leans into your touch, his nostrils fluttering as he inhales the scent of the water. Then you reach for the brush. The hush-hush sound is a sharp, dry rasp in the quiet of the wash, clearing away the fine silt that has turned his copper coat into a dull, dusty brown. As the sun begins its spectacular descent, painting the sky in violent streaks of crimson and bruised gold, the heat finally breaks. You sit on the cooling earth, leaning against a sun-warmed rock, and watch the pony graze on the dry, mineral-rich grasses of the hillside. The world has slowed to a standstill, the vast silence of the 13th century settling over the landscape like a heavy velvet cloak. You are a solitary figure on the edge of the known world, yet you do not feel alone. The hush-hush of the brush has tied your life to the life of the animal in a way that words can never express. You have crossed the high ice and the salt fires, and as the stars begin to spark in the deep indigo above, you know that the journey is not just a passage through geography, but a testament to the endurance of a shared soul. The final night of the journey arrives not with a grand fanfare, but with a profound and heavy stillness that blankets the hills in a silver frost. You wake in the deep blue hour before dawn, the stars overhead, looking like scattered diamonds on a bed of cold obsidian. In the year 1200, every journey has a natural end, a point where the horizon finally meets the destination. You rise and approach the pony who stands silhouetted against the coming light, his breath rising in steady, translucent plumes. This is the last time you will perform the ritual on the trail, and the weight of that realization makes your movements slow and deliberate. You reach for the brush, the wood now a perfect extension of your palm, and begin the final hush-hush of the long road. The bristles move through his coat with a rhythmic, reverent grace. You start at the pole, moving down the long arch of his neck, over the powerful slope of his shoulders, and along the sturdy line of his back. Each stroke is a memory, the biting wind of the Altai, the blinding white of the salt flats, the emerald peace of the hidden basin. The hush-hush sound is the heartbeat of your shared history, a song of survival that has played out across thousands of miles. You find that your hands know every scar, every muscle, and every haul of his hair. The pony stands in a state of absolute trust, his head lowered, his body leaning slightly toward yours. In this final grooming, you are not just cleaning away the dust of the world, you are sealing a bond that has transcended the role of master and beast. As the sun crests the eastern rim, flooding the world with a final triumphant gold, you see the destination in the distance, the low, sprawling walls of the great southern outpost, its signal fires sending thin ribbons of smoke into the clear sky. You do not rush. You finish the grooming with a soft piece of silk, polishing his coat until it gleams with a brilliance that seems to radiate from within. He looks magnificent, a creature of iron and light who has conquered the impossible. You saddle him one last time, the leather creaking softly in the morning air, and mount. The rhythm of his walk is proud and fluid, a celebratory cadence that echoes your own sense of quiet victory. The hush of the brush is gone, but its spirit resides in the strength of his stride and the clarity of his gaze. As you pass through the heavy timber gates of the outpost, the noise and bustle of the world return, the shout of guards, the clang of metal, the smell of cooking fires, but within the space between you and the horse, the silence remains. You dismount in the central courtyard and hand the reins to a waiting groom, but before you let go, you place your hand on the pony's neck one last time. The world has slowed to a standstill, the long journey of the 13th century reaching its quiet conclusion. You look back toward the distant, shimmering mountains and then at the animal who carried you through them. The hush-hush of the brush will fade into the memories of the trail, but the peace you found in the rhythm of your care will remain forever, a silent promise kept, a journey ended in the grace of a shared soul.
Sleepy History with Tales is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, You acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep.
Thank you for your understanding and support.